I don't see him.
Okay.
You want to? It's 143 is ready though. So do you want
Okay. I'll get started because I just have to read through a lot of things. So we'll get started. We're also waiting for the chief, so you might want to watch out for him in case he ends up in the wrong room. Okay. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Cohasset Select Board meeting. It is Tuesday, January 26, 2021. We're starting around 7:04 p.m. Tonight's meeting is being conducted on the Zoom platform and live streamed on Cohasset 143 TV, as well as Cohasset's Facebook page. The public is also invited to participate in the meeting through the Zoom platform, which can be accessed using the link provided at the top of the posted agenda for tonight's meeting. Please note that comments will not be monitored anywhere but within the Zoom platform. Members of the board and other scheduled participants will be able to participate when called on by the chair. Board members will be able to ask questions of any participant, and all votes taken at the meeting will be by roll call. Members of the public who wish to ask questions are asked to utilize the question and answer feature on Zoom, including typing in their name and address for the public record. The chair will review the questions and direct them to the appropriate participant for a response if necessary. Tonight's a little bit of a different kind of meeting because within our meeting we have a public hearing, and we at that point I'll explain how we will solicit public comment at that time. This meeting is being recorded and will be available for later viewing on Cohasset 143 TV, as well as YouTube, I believe. So our first order of business is a roll call to order, beginning with Jack. Jack, you're on mute.
Jack Creighton here.
Thanks.
Ray Evans here.
Diane Kennedy here.
Paul Schubert here.
Harry Thompson here.
Great, the meeting is open. And I would like to invite everyone to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The first business item on the meeting is public comment. If anybody would like to make a comment on a matter that is not on our agenda tonight, you may do so using the question and answer feature at the bottom of the Zoom. We'll give you a few seconds to type in. Please, if you are making a comment, please type in your full name and address. Carrie, if you want to monitor that.
Yep, monitoring now.
Just give it another minute. Okay, we don't see any. If for some reason something comes up, it'll be at my discretion, depending on how we're doing in the meeting, to review other comments not on items not related to our agenda. So the first order of business, and we have a lot going on this evening, so without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Chief Sylvia and eventually Pam Fahey and Chief Quigley and Chris Senior to discuss kind of the current situation with COVID and vaccine. So Chief.
Morning, board. Good morning, good evening, board members and Madam Chairperson. It's been one of those days. So some good news. The good news is that on the COVID front is that the town of Cohasset and the emergency management group created a COVID vaccine task force that involved public health, public safety, emergency management, and town government. And we've been working at this for a couple of weeks to get ready. And we did the 2 first responder vaccine clinics, which were our dry runs of our plans. And we have built a plan for the rollout of vaccine in the town of Cohasset that is completely scalable so that we can run as many days a week and as many hours as we need to run, and it will all be dependent upon how much vaccine is delivered for distribution. So that all being said, what I can tell you is that the plan is ready. We've practiced the plan. We've been working at this from an emergency management standpoint, and Glenn has joined us at this point also. So it will involve town employees, CERT volunteers, police department, fire department, public health, elder affairs, everybody. But the good news is the plan is ready to go. That being said, we have to start planning for when we roll out vaccine, when the vaccine is distributed to us. So I'm going to pass it on over to Pam, and she can explain exactly how we're going to do that.
Okay. Chris, you gonna let me share my screen?
Should be able to.
Okay. Great. Can everybody see my screen with the Cohasset homepage? Okay,
Yes.
great. So as a first step to find out how much vaccine we're going to need for each eligible group, as you may remember, the vaccine is going to be distributed by phases, phase 1, 2, and 3. And we're currently still in phase 1, and we're getting towards the end of it. We're getting down to healthcare workers. And then the governor announced yesterday that phase 2 would begin the week of February 1st, and that includes people 75 and older. So one of the things we need to do to plan is to find out how many people we have eligible in each group. So we've set up a pre-registration. So you go to our Town of Cohasset homepage, which is cohassetma.org. And up the top, it says emergency alert, and it says Cohasset COVID-19 blog, read on. And that's where you want to click to start. And this takes us to our Cohasset 19 news. It's basically a news blog. So here's the homepage. You want to go to vaccination. And then here's the information about pre-registration. So it says, for those who live or work in the town of Cohasset, please click here to pre-register. So you literally click here. And you come to this form. Now this form is set up to, it's designed to basically mimic that, that poster that shows like phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. So you come in, do your first name, last name, your email address. And then it says if you're a Cohasset resident, if the answer is yes, it just drop down menu, you just write in your street name, your street number. If no, if you were working Cohasset and you said yes, it would say what business, like where do you work? So then from there, this is where we are now. We're in phase 1. These were the hospital workers. These were people who were vaccinated by their hospitals, long-term care facilities. These people were vaccinated by CVS, emergency medical services. That's the first responders. We did that about a week or 2 ago, 2 weeks ago, I think. We don't have congregate care settings. So now this is where we are. So this week, if people click on their home-based healthcare worker, a drop-down menu comes on, and they can just double check, are they a physical therapist, an occupational therapist, that type of thing. And if they are, they have that clicked, and it just says a note that you need to bring some kind of proof of where you work. So it can be like a pay stub or something like that. If you're not in phase 1, you keep proceeding and you go to phase 2. So now the group that's been calling us and emailing us a lot, and I understand why, because the governor said you're going to be eligible in a week or so, is are you 75 or older? So you just click on yes here. That's all you have to do. And if you don't fall into any of these other categories, you just kind of keep going down and you hit submit and you're good. Now, the key piece of information is your email address. If you include that, we will reach out to you when it's time to do 75 plus and we set up our clinics. We will use this email and we will email the clinic links to each person and say, this is how you actually register for a real clinic. This is where you will now, select a time slot and be registered. So like the chief said, we are really kind of at the mercy of the state now. Our plan was to do about 600 doses a week. We're up. I mean, honestly, like Mary Goodwin and I, who have been living this for almost a year now, we were so excited that we could really finally start making progress in vaccinating people. And we kind of got the rug pulled out from under our feet a bit yesterday, and we heard from the state, and they were saying they're not going to be able to give us as much as we want. They're actually going to really limit local public health. The state wants to emphasize their large mass vaccination sites. Be it that as it may, we are planning to pull ahead, and anybody that wants to register can get a shot. You know, the rollout might just be a little slow. Hopefully after the month of February, they can start increasing the amount they will send us. But for the immediate future, we're on a limited basis. But we will have clinics every week. They just probably be smaller than we'd like.
So, go ahead, Diane, please.
Yeah, my question basically is, so again, people can register, basically identify themselves as wanting to get a vaccine through the town of Cohasset, through the website, like now.
Right. Starting now, they can do that. And so what we're going to do is we're going to sort the results, and we'll see like how many phase 1 workers do we have for a clinic next week? How many people do we have 75 and older? And that will give us an idea of how much vaccine and how many clinics it's going to take to do all those people.
Just to follow up on that, and then I see questions.
Mhm.
You know, my concern is that people are going to sign up through the town, and then, you know, what if we can't accommodate, or how do we prioritize the you know, if we only get 100 doses a week and you have 500 people that are eligible that wanted a week, and how and when do we tell them that they need to go to a mass vaccine center like Gillette Stadium?
Right. So at this point,
Be
I
a hedge
mean,
and do both. Like,
if you're a senior citizen, you probably really don't want to go to Gillette Stadium. So
right.
it might help to look around and see if you could also sign up for a CVS or a Walgreens, if they're going to be available. Try to see if you can find something else if you can, but know that we will get to you. It might just take a little while. So when we get to that beginning of phase 2, we're only doing 75 and older, and we'll just do it probably in the order that people register, and we'll just we're going to send private links out to people, so it's not like people from other towns could come on our website and click on a clinic. That's not going to happen. They're going to be private links, and that's why we're going to use those email addresses from the pre-registration and only send it to like those 100 people. And if you've already got another appointment, say with CVS, that's sooner or something, just please let us know. We'll get the next person on the list.
Right.
So before we answer any other quick questions, you can hear from Pam that it is imperative that we get people to sign up, because we're using this pre-registration as our leverage for how many doses of vaccine we actually need. We're being told we're only going to get X. If we have 3, 4, 5 times that many people in a certain bracket, and we're talking about phase 2, part 1, people north of 75, then we're going to, and Chris has already started this, and Chris will update you on that momentarily. We're going to really try to work this to see if we can get as much vaccine as we need. That being said, we really need people to sign up. And that's why I want to kind of kick this over to Chief Quigley, because Chief Quigley is the one that's been doing the yeoman's work on trying to get our media campaign to get everybody signed up done. So, Chief, would you just kind of give everybody a quick update on that?
Sure. Good evening, everyone.
Chief Sylvia, before Chief Quigley, if you don't mind, Corey and Carrie both had their hands up. Do Corey and Carrie, do you want to speak now, or are you okay waiting?
Yeah, I'll ask something now based on this. I'm a little bit worried that for some of our older residents that they might not have the technological abilities to sign up themselves. Are we able to make calls or do something to make sure we can help people that might not, you know, have the ability to sign up themselves online? Also, just a heads up to everyone, because I know this is really frustrating. I know a lot of other local legislators are working on trying to get a bigger vaccination site near the South Shore. I know that a lot of our residents don't want to be driving all the way to Gillette if that is what ends up happening. I would prefer that we have more power locally, but I know that is also something in the works where there might be another bigger location site coming somewhere on the South Shore. Also, we do have one question actually more questions now.
Carrie,
One
I'd like to hold off on the public
Okay.
questions until we're done with this presentation and the board has their opportunity to ask questions.
So I will answer Carrie. In terms of what could a senior do if they don't have an email address or access to a computer or something, they can call the senior center, and there'll be people there, representatives there, that can help and walk through it. And this pre-registration part is actually very simple. It's really your first name, last name, email address, and your what category you're in. And if you're 75 plus, it's one click and then submit. So, but people will help you with the senior center.
And then Corey had his hand up. Are you okay, Corey, or do you, for Chief
No,
Quigley?
just quickly, I just want to clarify, when you say we need people to register, we need everyone to register, do you mean everybody, regardless of what stage you're in? I mean, like me, someone, do you need everyone in this form as quickly as possible? Is that what you're saying?
Everyone should pre-register at some point. I would say now, if you're phase 3, it's not crucial, but everybody is welcome
Is
to
it going
sign up.
Is it going to be make your job more difficult if you get 6,000 pre-registrations?
No, it's really not. It's fine. If
Okay.
everybody does it all at the same time, maybe it actually would be easier in the long run for us. So,
I don't think we'll have any trouble getting people to sign up. Before I
Okay.
said that out loud, I
Let's
wanted to
hope.
be sure
Yeah.
that this is really the tidal wave that we're ready for. So this is excellent news. Thank you.
Great,
Yeah.
thank you. Chief
And
Quigley.
And having, before you take that, Chief Quigley, just to follow up on that, the more people that pre-register, the more demand that we can show from the town of Cohasset, the more likelihood that we can push our case for more vaccine. If we have 4,000 people in the town of Cohasset that want to be vaccinated, then give us the vaccine and let us do our thing. It's very simple that way. So that's just a follow-up to that idea, Corey. Okay, Chief Quigley, I'm sorry.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Yeah, so just to reiterate what everybody else has said, we have the capacity locally to administer the vaccines. We have the capacity to do about, I think Pam said 600 inoculations a week. We just don't have the vaccines. So we're working hard to acquire as much vaccine as the state will give us. This past 5 or 6 days, I've been working with Chris and Pam and Chief Sylvia and Glenn and Jason and some others, just trying to message this correctly and get people on board for registering. And I think it is a good idea to pre-register as soon as you can, no matter what phase you're in, because it really doesn't matter on our end, because we're going to filter that, or the medical folks are going to filter that list, and they can narrow down the phase you're in based upon how you answer those questions. Beyond that, we've leveraged all of our email lists, and you'll probably be getting an email any minute announcing this to the masses. There's a press release that's been drawn up that's coming out probably as we speak as well, along with Facebook messaging. We've even changed over the mobile message boards in town, just giving information on directing people to the website. The website that we use, the COVID website, is cohassetcovid19.com. We had to truncate that a little bit or change it just for messaging ease. So we also bought a URL that's cohc19.com. So it's C as in Charlie 19.com, just so it's a little bit easier for people to remember, and that'll direct you to the main site. So I think our message is clean, it's clear, and hopefully we can get a good data point as to how many people we need to sign up.
Chris, are you speaking next? And then once you finish this presentation, because we may answer some of the questions, but
yeah.
there are questions from the public too.
So I just want to cap, this has been the successes that we've had in managing this locally, and this year-long pandemic has been because we've been able to collaborate as a team. And it's really been a team effort. We've been talking about this and working it up. And I want to thank everybody who's been part of this. Everyone who's on the screen, and a whole lot of other people who are making this work behind the scenes, and people you'd see at a clinic. So when we spoke again today, and Pam informed me of the state's kind of right turn on this thing yesterday, after us getting spun up for this, I reached out to both Senator O'Connor and Representative Moschino. And I spoke at length with Senator O'Connor's chief of staff today, and I also spoke with Representative Moschino. In fact, I had her on a call with Pam and Chief Sylvia and Chief Quigley earlier, and she pledges she's going to work hard because again, if it's the state's intention to make everyone who's young and healthy go to Fenway Park, well, that's going to be a decision they have to make, and that's April, right, or March. That said, and for some people, they just want to hop in their car and go to Gillette. That's great. But for most people, that's not a convenient option. I mean, we're kind of tucked away, not just us. I mean, a lot of other communities, we're ready for this. And, we can't vaccinate 5,000 people in a day, but we can vaccinate hundreds of people in a day. And we can really take care of the people most in need. And that's what we want to do. We want to be able to collaborate with the state. I've reminded both Representative Moschino and Senator O'Connor about that. They're on board. And we want to stay partners, right? I mean, we want to be partners with the state on this. We're set up. We did the first responder clinic. We have the right equipment. We can store the vaccine. We have the capability of doing that. And we have the team that's ready to do it. Our paramedics are getting spun up to do vaccines outside of ambulances. We've been partnering with South Shore Hospital. It's really been a tremendous collaborative effort. And we have town staff getting trained up on PrepMod so they can do the registration for people. Glenn is doing a great job getting our CERT volunteers spun up, making sure that we have the PPE from the storehouse that he's been able to develop, that we have the materials ready, so we could do a clinic. We can do a Cohasset-sized clinic, right? So there's a place for Gillette, there's a place for Fenway Park, but there's also a place for Wilkett Commons, and that's what we really want. A Wilkett Commons, a Deer Hill, that kind of a thing. And again, I just want to let you know that we've done that. They're receptive. They're hearing us. That said, as Carrie said too, reach out to our legislative leaders, right? The new speaker happens to be from Quincy. Maybe he's a little more attentive to South Shore concerns, but it's not just if it's there's a lot of other communities, a number of our neighbors that are ready to do the same thing. We're ready to go, and we just want to help. We want to be part of the solution, and we're ready to do it.
Great, thank you. I'll take some board questions, and we'll go to public questions. Paul.
So a couple things are on the horizon right now. The J&J vaccine is going to be reviewed by the Vaccination Review Committee of the CDC on Thursday. Likely this will be a single dose vaccine available probably in the following week. It may even be sooner. Typically the two vaccines that came out, Johnson, Pfizer and the Moderna, were okayed within 24 hours of recommendation from the vaccination committee. So this is J&J. I'm not sure where it's going to be sent from, but that'll be a third option. It's a single dose with a second arm of the trial looking at week 7. Week 8 with an additional dose. But it's reasonable with a single dose is what it was recommended to do. The other thing, which is more from those who are giving the vaccine, when we get the vaccine, they come in a multi-dose vial. The CDC sent out some recommendations for low dead space needles. So this is very technical, but there's going to be 7 doses in each vial if it's done properly, possibly up to 8. The 8th is probably too much, but they've recommended to use probably 3 or 4 low volume dead space needles first, and then use others for the larger ones. So you can extend using, because the limitation is going to be on the dead space needle and the low dead space needle. So you may use 3 or 4 and then use those standard needles on the other ones to get a total of 7 doses on each vial. So it's particular, but it is a way to extend 1 or 2 doses per vial. That's it.
Thank you. And before we go to the public questions, tee them up, Carrie. Chief Quigley, just in terms of the messaging, again, it is kind of confusing because we're asking people to, obviously, we want to collect names about who wants it, but I'm just concerned about the message that, but we might not be able to ultimately give you your vaccine because the state may have you go this place. I mean, do you feel comfortable with the messaging? And then also, should people be signing up kids or not?
I'll leave the kids are not part of any of the phases,
Okay.
but this is a pre-register, so I think we're clear in the message on the website
Right now, yeah.
right now, and we can always change it. And we have the great part is we have the ability to reply back once we capture that email address. We can reply back and keep give people some timely and just up to date information.
Great, thank you. Carrie, you want to turn it
Yeah,
Go into
on that
Publix.
note, to start with the kid question, we have a message from Katie Dugan about that saying, I'm assuming you don't want registration for youth yet. I have a 17-year-old who qualified for Pfizer, but not Moderna, who would be in phase 3. So those teenagers on the cusp, are they counted?
Right.
in or
So
not?
now at this point, we're just receiving Moderna, which is 18 and
Okay.
over. So yeah, nobody likely in high school or younger.
Okay. And then we have a question from Ashley Caleri at 205 Sawyer Street. Wondering if the town has given any consideration to providing a dedicated teacher staff a vaccination opportunity. I see that they are included as one of the groups in phase 2 and understand that there are limitations as to who you can vaccinate when according to state phases, but as school committee considers the possibility of bringing K-5 students back full-time, might we have an opportunity to create a clinic for the 276 teachers and staff?
Well, can I share my screen again, Chris? I could probably just do it right now, right? So can you all see that?
Yep.
Okay. So this is currently where we are right now today, right? We're still trying to finish up the bottom of phase 1. And then beginning the week of February 1st, we start individual 75 plus on phase 2. So we're going to do everybody that wants one. It just might take us a long time since we're being so handcuffed by the state. Now, hopefully that will change under the circumstances that Dr. Schubert just talked about, the fact that, the legislators are pressuring people, but we're going to get through this one way or another, with whatever vaccine we can get. So then the next group of that, 65 plus, people with 2 comorbidities, that's still going to be another big group. And then the third group finally under phase 2 is going to be the teachers. So it's so early to tell at this point. Things are changing week to week. What's it going to be like by the time we get to teachers? Are we going to have as much vaccine as we'd like? If we could get our 600 doses that we really would like, I don't see why we couldn't do that and knock it off in a week. But it's just so day to day. Nobody saw the governor coming along and telling us that we're going to be restricted and capped like we are right now. I mean, I would say hopefully, but that's all I can say. We have to kind of just wait it out week to week and see how it shakes out.
And if I could just jump back in there just real quick, understand that when we built the idea of these vaccination clinics, they are scalable. We have the ability with the building that we're using, which is Wilkett Commons, the one thing that we have to be careful about is people have to sit for anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes after they have the vaccine, because it's the very first time this vaccine's been rolled out. They're worried about reactions. So we have to have people and we have to watch them for the 15 to 30 minutes and make sure everybody's good. So that slows us down just a little bit. That being said, we know that in a 4-hour window, we can do 200 vaccinations. If we had enough vaccine, we could do that 5 days in a row and do 1,000 people. So we can do 200 people in a 4-hour window every day if we have the vaccine to do it. So it really does, as Pam said, it really comes down to, we don't know what we don't know at the moment. And the we don't know is we don't know what we're going to have for a vaccine supply. But once we have the vaccine, we're going to get it into people's arms as quickly as possible. Mary's already lined up the nurses. We've already lined up the staff. Pam is training people in prep mod. We are good to go. Go ahead, Chief Quigley. I'm sorry.
Thanks. And one of the things I have to keep on reminding myself is that we have to do this again. So this is just the first dose. We have to do this again in 26 or 28 days. So, everything we're doing up front here, it's going to happen again. It's going to be Groundhog Day, unless we're using Johnson & Johnson's single dose.
Right. And that second dose might eat up.
Oop, you muted yourself, Diane, I think.
Yes, I do. I want in-person meetings, but that second dose is going to complicate things, because when you think like on week 4, you're going to be able to start the next round of people, you're really going to probably be limited by the doses to just working on the second dose. So
yeah, there's a ton of logistics, and I'm going to
oh my gosh,
lucky we have Glenn.
Yeah. That's great. Carrie, are there a couple other comments?
One more question from Ashley Caleri asking, do we have the storage capacity for the Pfizer vaccine or just for Moderna?
Just for Moderna. And then Johnson & Johnson won't be an issue either.
Okay.
Pfizer's the only one we can't do.
All right. I think we are okay with questions.
Great. Any other questions from board members? Paul?
So one quick thing, we're barely over the second wave. The weekend of Martin Luther King weekend was a very, very, very busy hospital weekend. Numbers are just beginning to break in our direction of lowering. Keep in mind, the vaccination that is ongoing is going to slow the spread, but it's going to take weeks for this to get out, and it's also going to take weeks to be immunized. So you've got dose 1, and then you've got 3 weeks later, dose 2. It's really only after dose 2, 5 days out. So you're going to have 4 weeks that you're going to be open for potential infection, even with the vaccine, whether it's Moderna or Pfizer. So you still have to keep meticulous care with masking and preventing spread. There is one other variant that is out there that appears to be more contagious, which is why you probably saw some of the people at the inauguration wearing double masks. It is very contagious still. It has not changed. If anything, it's probably gotten worse. So we still have to be really tough about masking and prevention of spread, even with the vaccination. And it's going to be several months before there are enough people vaccinated that we will be comfortable saying, I can go to a restaurant and not worry. So please keep that in mind for the next month and a half, 2 months. That's it.
Any last minute comments from everybody? Again, thank you all very much for shouldering along and soldiering along and really under incredible circumstances. We all have fatigue from this, so I commend you for hanging in there. Okay, great. Good night. Just for those watching, we have a couple of really quick items of business, and then we will open a public hearing, which was posted for 7:30. It's more likely and is listed on the agenda at 7:45. So hang in there with us. The next item is on the agenda is cemetery plot repurchase at Woodside Cemetery. There was a memo in our packets that a resident, Lois Hughes, is asking the town, and we are actually the cemetery commissioners in our role as members of the select board, to purchase back from her family 2 cemetery plots at Woodside Cemetery. The purchase price for each grave for us would be to buy them for $500 each for a total of $1,000. My understanding is, and Tracy, if you don't mind popping in, my understanding is that Ms. Hughes had requested whether we would consider selling those plots for a market rate, a current market rate. But apparently there was a decision by town meeting to set the price for cemetery plots at $500 back in
2008.
2008. So we actually don't have the ability to sell the plots or to buy back the plots for more than $500 each. So the consideration by the board would be willing to buy back those 2 plots from the Hughes family for $500 each for a total of $1,000. And those plots would then just become available to the public looking for plots. So that's what I know. Any questions on this? Anybody have any concerns about that? Do we know what the current rate is for cemetery plots? No.
Diane, it's Glenn Pratt.
Hi, Glenn.
There are 2 prices. Beechwood is $1,450 and Woodside is $1,800 and change.
Oh, wow.
And that's because the Woodside price was set high when we built the addition Gold Star Mother section on about March, whenever that was, because we had debt obligations to pay.
That makes sense. So I think based on the decision of town meeting in 2008, we have no other option but to offer Ms. Hughes $1,000 for the 2 plots. So Jack, you have a question?
Does she have the option to sell it to somebody else? If she wants more money, can she just
They do not.
put an ad in the paper?
Glenn?
No, she cannot. State law, chapter 114 prohibits that.
Okay.
Good question. So I think what I would like to request from the board is a motion, if you're willing to buy back the graves at totaling $1,000 to Ms. Hughes, and then it can be up to her, whether that's acceptable.
I can do it. I move that we buy back the plots from Lois Hughes and family located in Woodside Cemetery, Section B, Lot 129 Northeast for the total of $1,000.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we'll do a roll call vote, beginning with Jack.
Jack Creighton, aye.
Corey Evans, aye.
Diane Kennedy, aye.
Paul Schubert, aye.
Harry Thompson, aye.
Okay, great. And Tracy, you'll communicate with Ms. Hughes, and we
Yes,
can
I will.
maybe readdress whether, we want to up that for future, but that would be a town meeting decision, and that's not likely to happen probably in the next year or two.
Sure.
Okay, next up is just an update on committees and boards and one appointment. We mentioned at a previous meeting that there was a resignation of a full position on Conservation Commission. I reached out to the chair. Right at this moment, the 2 associate members are not ready or don't want to make the obligation to become a full member at this time. So we're not going to be addressing that tonight. So we're going to just kind of leave that situation where it's at. And I'll maintain a communication with the chair should anything change. And I mean, typically the associate members serve, they serve 1-year terms, and that's really to get them kind of get their feet wet on the work of the Conservation Commission. And anyway, so we're going to table that for the time being. And we have with us, I believe, Woody Chidick, Chair of the Zoning Board of Appeals, and David McMorris, a longtime associate member of Zoning Board of Appeals. And Woody, if you just want to tell us, you had a resignation and you're recommending that David move from the associate membership to a full member.
Absolutely. David has served as an apprentice, really, on our board for coming up 11 years. That's longer than most people ever serve in a given board in this entire town. So our plan is to our hope is to have Dave appointed as a regular member, and then we'll sort out the administrative side of things at our next zoning board meeting.
Great. Any questions for David? David, thank you for your longtime service in the associate role.
I mean, that's probably sets a record. I'm not sure, but
and there would then be with this advancement, there would be an associate position open on zoning.
Right. And so we will be back in touch with this board, in the future, but.
And your board has had some turnover over the last couple of years. Matt Watkins and Nancy Darst are relatively new, say 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, and actually it's interesting for the zoning board, that's recent.
Yeah.
I mean, a typical zoning board member serves about 20 years in the board, 15 to 20 years. So we're very fortunate to have that kind of institutional knowledge.
And some new perspective as well.
Right. So we're getting new people in, and anyway, we'll deal with some of us old guys later, but
keep on trucking. Thank you. Any questions from the board, Paul?
What's the length of the term that's going to be filled?
3 years.
I'm sorry, 3 years?
Oh, the term.
Thank
filled.
you.
I think
have
it's
it
about Sorry, go ahead, Diane. You-
Yeah, I have
please
it
do.
written down. This would be to fill Peter Gerdeca's role, because he's the one that resigned, and that is through this June 30th. So, David, you would just have to put in for reappointment at the end of this fiscal. So the term would be through June 30th, 2021.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions from the board? Okay, Jack?
I just want to nominate David McMorris to the Zoning Board of Appeals
As a full member for term ending.
as a full member of the term ending June 30th.
Thank you very much. Is there a second? Carrie, okay, great. Roll call vote, beginning with Jack.
Jack Creighton, aye.
Corey Evans, aye.
Diane Kennedy, aye.
Paul Schubert, aye.
Harry Thompson, I.
Great. Thank you both very much.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate you being here.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
David.
Right.
And lastly, is the Post-Employment Benefits Committee. We did not reappoint the slate last summer because they were going to work on presenting a charge to become a standing committee. Right now, they were set to sunset after their proposal to the board. Their recommendations to the board, which we took on like late last fiscal year, so probably in May or June. So right now they're working on a presentation for us and a draft of a committee charge that they would carry forward relative to post-employment benefits and kind of overseeing and making recommendations to us on that. So I would like, so that they could keep going, and this is more an administrative thing, to reappoint until June 30th, 2021, the 5 members of PEB, which are Paul Carlson, Donna Collins, Timothy Davis, Katie Dugan, and Mark Maggi. If somebody would be willing
So
to move
moved.
that slate. Okay, so moved. Is there a second?
Second,
Okay, and we'll do a roll call vote for those 5 appointments again through June 30th, 2021.
Jack Creighton, aye.
Corey Evans,
You muted yourself. Diane Kennedy, aye.
Paul Schubert, aye.
Harry Thompson, I.
And Corey, that was an aye.
yes, I'm sorry, Corey Evans.
Thank you. Okay,
I want to also thank all of those members because that's a huge long-term evaluation of the risk and benefits of employment benefits and pension benefits for the town. And it's a huge undertaking.
I'll second
Agreed.
that.
yeah, thank you. And they'll be on a very soon future agenda. Okay, so we are moving right along. And I'm gonna, in a minute, read the hearing notice, but before I do that, just sort of, I just want to kind of tee up that we're doing a public hearing tonight on the application of Red Lion Inn Operating LLC for a liquor license, common victual license, and liquor management license. As part of their license requests, we're going to review some conditions that changes that they are requesting, and we'll put those up on the board and have a discussion. I'm going to hold public comment until after the presentation from the applicant and questions from the board. Then we'll open it up for anybody that wants to speak on behalf of the public. We have received 2 letters, which we can summarize, but I believe both parties are in attendance and they want to just speak in person. So with that, I'm going to read the public hearing notice. The Cohasset Select Board, acting as the liquor licensing authority, will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, January 26, 2021 at 7:30 p.m. via remote participation on a Zoom platform to consider the application of the Red Lion Inn Operating LLC DBA, the Red Lion Inn, for a new annual on-premises all alcohol inholder license and common victualler license at 71 South Main Street, Cohasset, Mass. 02025. The proposed manager is Marika M. Edlund. The licensed premises is approximately 13,344 square feet and is 3 floors. On the first floor, front and rear entrance, dining area, kitchen, and main lobby. Included is the bistro, restaurant, lounge, jazz club, and 2 function facilities. Hillside House located on the second floor, second and third floor rooms for rent, as well as an outside patio area located on the south side of the inn with 30 seats. The public is invited to offer public input on this application in writing by emailing joram@cohassetma.org in advance of the public hearing, and can also attend via the Zoom platform. Details for access to the Zoom platform for this hearing will be posted on the Select Board's agenda when posted. The agenda will be available online at cohassetma.org in the meetings, hearing notices of calendar section located on the bottom of the front page of the website. Information regarding the application will be available online prior to the meeting. If there are any questions, please contact Jennifer Orem at joram@cohassetma.org, posted by the Cohasset Select Board. And if they're not already, I see Alex Marconi and Guillaume Isaverdens are both with us. I am going to turn it over to one of you. Oh, we also have special counsel Jim Lamke with us, who's going to flag me if I do anything wrong. And I'm going to turn it over to either Alex or Guillaume to sort of cue up the presentation, kind of walk us through what you're looking for, that this is a new business entity looking for common vic, alcohol license, and liquor manager and entertainment. And then we will probably ask questions. We'll walk through the conditions that you have asked for, and then we will take some public comment. So, Alex, Guillaume, who's up?
Hi, I'm Guillaume Isaverdens. I'm the General Manager for the Cohasset Hospitality Partner Group. Next to me is Marika Edlund, which we are proposing for our manager on record on the license. As you are aware, the Cohasset Hospitality Partner Group took over ownership of the Red Lion from the previous owner. We are now fully in possession of all the entities and everything, and this is why we are now, after the operating agreement, moving forward to the full new application for a new license under the management of the new management, the Red Lion Operating LLC. We work very closely with Jennifer Orem, Town Council, and our council as well to go over some of the old conditions from the year 2000 when it was first established. We had some minor request changes for the hours of operation and just to be able to operate the business after a very tough year of COVID and hardship.
Thank you. So basically, the licenses that are being applied for are the all alcoholic beverage license and common victualler license. The new manager, which is Marika. Hi, nice to meet you. I'll ask you to speak in a minute. And then the entertainment license, and then discussing the conditions on the property, correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay. Alex, did you want to add anything?
Nope. I just want to thank the board for hearing this. I think that, over the last 2 years, we've shown, attention to detail, respect for the neighbors, respect for, the existing conditions of our license. Obviously, 2020 was an incredibly challenging year for our industry. And that's been, across the country. However, we are not immune in Cohasset. Our operations have essentially been shuttered through state restriction. At the Red Lion, we had around 100 employees that we were paying on a regular basis, both full-time and part-time. And those jobs are, for the most part, gone. And, that is, 80 plus people who we're not providing a paycheck to anymore. And I just ask for the board to view this application and the request for the changes to the conditions as a new chapter in the life of the Red Lion. It's a historic part of Cohasset. It's been there for a very long time. And we, as the new owners and managers, want to maintain it in all of its, history and make sure that it really is a benefit for the town of Cohasset. We are in the food and beverage industry and hospitality industry. That's our business. We take it very seriously. This is not a, short-term sort of operational or, investment opportunity for us. This is something that we spent a lot of time thinking about doing. It's been, a long 2 years, but, representing the ownership, I'm happy to be here and be able to say to the board, it's a new chapter. The former owner is gone, and we can begin to, restore the inn and set a new standard for what we want it to be. And we hope you're all on board with us doing that. And we need your support, and we need the support of the people of the town of Cohasset. So I fully understand and am aware of the concerns from the neighbors. Their concerns are valid. They are legitimate. We're not here to debate that. But what we are here to do is explain our position and deliver what we think is a very solid plans and procedures to prevent what happened in the past, and it's the past, from happening again. I mean, we want to have great relationships with everybody in the town, including our neighbors who are, very close to our property.
Great, thank you. So what I'd like to do is maybe pull up the comparison for conditions, but I see Jack has his hand up. So Jack, if you want to ask a question.
Yeah, just to clarify, you may have touched on this. I mean, who owns the property? And do they own Atlantica and this property? This has gone back and forth. There's been unfair conservation fines. Now this is a completely new entity that you own it, and you own Atlantica as well?
Yeah, yes, sir. And the Cohasset Harbor Inn. So,
and the Salt House.
Yes, and the Salt House.
And the Salt House had, as you know, $60,000 of unpaid conservation fines. Were those ever paid, or is that the obligation of the previous owner?
Yes, sir. That's not something that I was aware of until you just brought it up. I would imagine that has to do with the pier.
Yeah.
Is correct. I know that speaking for the new ownership, and our plan is to repair it as soon as we possibly can. Obviously, COVID has thrown a wrench in that, but specific details regarding past fines and things like that, I'm sorry, I do not have information on that.
My understanding too, this is a separate DBA that's specifically managing and seeking the liquor license for and the operating license for the Red Lion Inn.
Yes, that is correct. That is correct. Yes, this is an entirely separate business. Yes.
Okay. And then just before we get to the list of conditions and the discussion there, because I think that's where probably the board's going to have the most questions, and also the public. If any of the people who are attending the Zoom meeting would like to be heard, we would like to bring you into the meeting once we have the board go through the conditions. And I would ask you to sort of type your name and address in now so that we can get you teed up right after the board discussion. Okay. Jen, are you going to pull that, or Tracy? And then Alex or Guillaume, are either of you going to kind of walk us through? I believe the chart we're going to look at is the conditions that were
comparison
assigned to the license, and then kind of what you're looking for that's new.
Yes, that's correct. Guillaume can walk you through that.
Okay.
Yeah, so basically on the left hand side we have the conditions that were established in 2000 when the first license for the previous owner was issued. And so we consulted with town manager Jennifer Oram in depth, and with our council and the town council as well, to really go over the details. And we know there's a lot of questions and a big history with the town and the difference in conditions. So we decided to keep it to as close as possible to the original conditions. We do have some future amendments that we're possibly going to look at. As for now, we're really looking at just getting a license, being able to reopen and get everything in order for the Red Lion. So basically on the comparison, number one hasn't changed at all. the number two, when we're talking about the porch area on the South Main Street facing the street, this is the little deck porch area that is adjacent to the tavern and the pub. This porch, basically the only difference that we requested would be to extend the use from, was it May 15th through September 30th, to April 1st through October 31st, obviously to push the outdoor seating as much as possible, weather depending, with the restrictions in COVID and all this, to like maximize the outdoor capacity. And then the hours just extended for 1 hour, from 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. And then the capacity, I believe we're at 35. We do have some restriction with the ABCC when we're going to go over and just go over the all capacity and area measurements and all this for each premises. Now on number 3, I believe, yeah, so I think this was a little mixed up here. So number 3, if you look on the right hand side, actually, the garden is pretty much the same as number 2, just extended the hours for the garden, which is the little summer garden, as we call it. That is the little area with the water fountain just on the side of the porch, right before the old bakery, now known as Anchor and Sail. This area is all enclosed, and we just requested the same extended time frame from April 1st through October 31st instead of May through September. And then the hours the same as the porch, and capacity up to 55 patrons.
Can I just ask a question, and just thinking about the rhythm of this discussion, if the board has any questions specific to any of these conditions, just wave me down. But one of the questions I have is, what is the capacity? 55 seems like an awful lot of people in that small area. And then if you had 35 on the porch, that's 90 people in what's a relative small area.
Yeah, so absolutely. So right now we're looking, obviously at the moment with COVID and all the restrictions, the 6 feet apart, the 6 people per table is very limited. We're looking at more in the future, and to maximize the outdoor possibility for any event or possible of a cocktail hour or whatnot. So maximum, when we talk about 55 capacity, depending on the square footage, we're looking at least 30 people sit down, or if we could do a quick cocktail hour outdoor to once again maximize the outdoor area of use instead of like getting everybody inside.
So an example of that may be, a client or business may want to rent that space, have dinner service. They may want to have past hors d'oeuvre and, some a standing reception. So this would allow us to be able to do that. Its primary use would be as a outdoor dining area, which obviously, we're dealing with COVID.
Much less. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. I mean, you could only seat so many people within that area and be able to service them efficiently and effectively. And that's our primary goal. Obviously, we don't want to be, tripping over customers or asking them to move. So that's not necessarily to be the case. We wouldn't have 55 seats necessarily out there.
Dan, can I jump in?
Sure.
First thing, Jen, it looks like you're controlling, or whoever's controlling this. Can you just be sure to zoom in, because people on smaller screens, the text can get small, especially if they're watching on the TV station. So thank you for the chart. This was helpful. I did have some trouble kind of lining things up. It looks like on this chart, at least line 3 here with the Jazz Bar Club should be really on line 4.
Yeah, exactly.
And that leaves garden. So and I couldn't find in the old licensing area that referenced a garden. Does our council, or does anyone know what the current your restrictions on the garden are, so we can kind of fill that comparison hole in.
Ms. Jennifer?
That area appears to be new from the previously existing conditions. So I'm not sure that the garden area, that the enclosed patio was something that was previously included in the license, unless Jen has more information on that.
Diane, you got something? Looks like.
Yeah, we can't hear you, Jen, but in the left column, number 3, looks like it matches up with the right column, number 4, and that
Right, yes.
that column on the right-hand side next to 3 is new. That's how I marked it.
It's new. And if for the Cohasset Hospitality Partners, that's the area that you, I think last summer had like a beer garden banner outside. Is that the garden area?
Yeah,
it's understood.
It's the space
Okay.
in between the Red Lion main building and the anchor and sail.
Okay. And then for Mr. Lamke, in that area, since they already had an operation, they were already doing stuff there. Where did that fall under? You know, since their current agreement doesn't have one, and the new agreement does, where was it operating under? Since it wasn't explicitly carved out.
That I'm not sure of, because going by the existing conditions, I did not see that patio area being specifically included under one of the license conditions. So I'm not aware that that area was included under the prior license.
Looking at,
I'm going to ask Jen to comment.
Can you hear
Yeah.
me?
Yep, we can hear
Okay.
you now.
The South Street patio was added in 2000. If you scroll to the very bottom of the conditions, there was an application filed in 2011 for an alteration of extension of premises. At that time, the south patio, which they are referring to as the garden, was approved. The patio area was denied. And I apologize, I've hit some button and I'm trying to make it look better, so.
yeah, so
sorry,
it was added.
go ahead.
But yeah, but I think the condition or the use of that space would not be on this conditions list, the original use, Mr. Evans. What we're asking for is basically approval to use it under these conditions here.
I totally appreciate that. I'm just, since we're doing the comparison thing, I'm trying to really understand what was what and what is new. And it seemed to me like this was new, but I knew you're operating it. So just, outside of these new restrictions, what, it seems reasonable that you would have that space being used under some other thing. And I think what Jen said was clarifying.
And one of the, I think one of the main points here is to extend the calendar dates of being able to operate outside, particularly relative to the COVID restrictions, outdoor dining, and outdoor gathering seems to be the numbers are larger, and it just allows us larger, to be able to feed more people essentially. So.
Yeah, I'd rather be outside too. So yeah, thank you.
I'm just going to interrupt these proceedings for 2 seconds because I have about 12 text messages saying there's a big black box for those people that are watching at home, and it apparently is an issue with the cable TV transmission. So we apologize for that. If you go to cohassetma.org and get the agenda, you can click into the Zoom webinar and watch from there. So apologies to those, and apologies for breaking up the rhythm. So if we're okay, Corey, to go back to the comparison of conditions so that we can fully understand this before we open it up for more questions and comments.
Wonderful, thank you.
So Guillaume, I think we were at number 5, and that was just.
I don't think we did number 4. So
Okay.
number 4 was the jazz club, and if you look actually on the mess up on column 3 and 4, the jazz club originally was only permitted for Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and we were requesting to have it allowed 7 days a week. That would allow us to do some weekly specials in the jazz club, and we've talked with the previous manager on record to try to see if we can do some special gatherings for the town and special little events open to the public.
Okay.
Number 5 is.
I have a quick question on that. That
Sure.
Jazz Bar Club, is that the former cave? You walk down the stairs and it's the
Yes,
cutout
right.
area of the
Yes, sir.
the granite.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Okay,
Subterranean.
right.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's a lot of names, and we're trying to change some of the names of.
Yeah, no, I'm just trying to locate it in the space of where it is. It's in that walk down basement area cut out of the granite.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Real quick, sorry to interrupt. Are there any photos that any of you could share of these spaces? I know a lot of them have seen them, but I think we're all trying to understand which ones you're referring to specifically when it comes to the comparison chart. I don't know if anyone has those handy, but they may be helpful.
I
do not have them handy.
I did share with Jennifer Oram some of the floor plans. I don't know if that's going to help, but there was floor plans of the full tavern and the different zones. I don't know if Jen has those handy that she could share.
Could we keep rolling while Jen looks for that? And then Jen, if you find them, just wave and we'll, any kind of a floor plan that we could look at.
All right. So we're looking at number 5 was actually an old condition that we didn't touch barely. That was really for the first floor of the barn to be open to the public for bar bistro. And I believe the main use would be for a chef's table, a special chef's dinner. When it says beer and wine served as a bar bistro, I believe this was the main use. We didn't really change anything apart from the capacity, once again, 40 to 30. I'm a little uncertain of the use of the space, as right now it is mostly for event with the kitchen only. And we could, I believe there was for the back of the area, which is now storage, that we could discuss the possibility of.
This was an original condition of the prior owner. This was a basement, essentially private dining room, which the construction was never finished. So it is technically a licensed premises within the footprint of the line. But it's not in a condition as of today that we would be able to service any customers there. We would like to keep it on. There's an opportunity for that in the future, but not.
Okay.
I don't know if Jennifer, you want to scroll down? Then we're looking at number 6 for the use of the second and third floor of the barn. So there's a couple changes on this one here. We're looking at first to request the 10 a.m. liquor service versus the 11 a.m. in order to at least do some brunch events. We have a lot of requests for brunches from the previous guests that are staying at the hotel, from let's say we have a Friday wedding or a Saturday wedding and wants to do the brunch in the morning. This is one of the big requests. The 11 a.m. is a little late.
It's a late start time for brunch, yes.
Yeah. Then there was some conditions on the old conditions here regarding the hours of operation from Sunday through Thursday until 10 p.m. and then Friday and Saturday until 11 p.m. The main reason why we're requesting the 7 days a week until 1 a.m., we are limited with our license. We're limited. We're following all the guidelines from the ABCC regarding each event is a 5-hour bar service, liquor service, which is actually 4.5 hours per liquor regulations. We shut off the bar 4.5 hours after start. And then the main reason why we're requesting until the 1 a.m. is to be able to execute 2 events in one day, to be able to have one that would start around noon or 1, and to be able to flip the room, sanitize, and especially now with the COVID restrictions, have a deep clean, sanitizing, and resetting for a second event that will start a little later. At the moment, the latest we could start an event would be 6 o'clock on the weekend, and then 5 o'clock weekdays. So this is one of the main reasons why we're requesting for the 1 a.m.
And just for clarification on the time that for the liquor license, and this might be for Jim and or council and or Jen, is that for like service? Does that mean they can actually be pouring drinks till 1 o'clock in the morning, or does that just mean like you have to be out of there and operations have to cease by 1 o'clock in the morning?
I'd have to take a look at your rules and regulations, and I'll do that as we're chatting here, unless Jen knows offhand. But the board can establish conditions that patrons you have to stop serving at a certain time and be out by 1, or stop serving at 12:30. You may have addressed that in your regulations, and if you give me a second while you're going over this,
I can do the same.
I'll pull the regulations up.
Right, but we would be closing and we would no longer be serving alcoholic beverages past 12:30.
12:30, correct.
That is how we operate the business. Bars close a half an hour before guests are required to be out of the building.
Okay.
So it would
That's
be a
helpful.
1 a.m. depart for all of the guests.
Okay.
And I think it's important to note relative to this condition change that the length of alcoholic beverage service is not expanding. We are simply asking to be open later in order to be able to do more business, which is what we need to be able to do. The situation that our industry and our businesses are in right now is dire. And I don't think I'm overstating it. The hospitality industry has been gutted. Restaurants are closing left and right. Function facilities are closing left and right. People are out of work because the hospitality industry has been essentially shut down. So we can discuss conditions and concerns relative to the changes more, but I do want to make sure that the board understands that.
Great, thank you.
One quick note on those points, and pretty much the 7 and 8 are very, 6 and 7 are very similar, but for the different function rooms for the Hillside House as well for the barn. There's one request that we took out the use permitted for functions only. And our main goal right here is, as it was mentioned in one of the letters from our neighbors, it is absolutely not to open to the public every day and all day, all year. It is just to allow us to be able to do some gatherings for the general public, meaning not as an event, on special occasions. We're talking about Mother's Day, Easter. We're talking about some of the special events that even with the town of Cohasset, we would have been able to execute some special parties for the 250th anniversary and all those special events that could be open to the public, just to be able to open this door on special occasions.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. Number 8 is exactly the same, right?
So it was, yeah, number 7 is actually the same for the old Lilac House that we actually named now the Hillside House. The only difference was that it was already permitted for 7 days a week, 11 to 11. And now we're just requesting the 10 a.m. once again for the brunch service until 12 a.m. So just 1 hour extra on the salon here, in the Hillside House.
Madam Chair, before we go on to number 8, I just want to be sure that you've noticed on number 7, originally it said restricted to function guests only, and the proposal or the request is primarily used as a function room. So when it's not primarily used as a function room, it would imply that it would be open to the public.
Okay. Thanks for noting that. Jack has a question.
Yeah, and it kind of relates to what Attorney Lamke just said. And by the way, I think we all agree that COVID has been a real challenge, to say the least, to the hospitality industry and a lot of jobs. However, I think we should keep in mind that what they're asking for is not for COVID relief. These are a permanent thing. So some of the things they're asking for under the for COVID, they're asking really for permit. And the other thing is that it does seem to me that I'm seeing that things that were approved for functions are now being essentially proposed to be, year round, open to the public. And I'm not sure if there's any difference between if this license between the previous function license and just a regular, club bar open to the public.
Great. Does anybody want to answer that, or do you want to move on to 8, 9, and 10, which I believe are all exactly the same? So there's.
Right. I think and Guillaume started just relative to, I think that the term general public is being used and is maybe, portraying this in a way that, we're going to open up the Red Lion barn and have, cash bars in there 7 days a week. That is not the intention. The intention is to be able to use the space for what I would call retail sales. Those retail sales include Thanksgiving, Mother's Day, Easter Sunday. Right now, we are restricted from being able to hold large numbers of restaurant reservations in that space. That's where we're asking for the forgiveness and the understanding and the release on the restriction. And as easily or as intentionally as these restrictions were put in place, I understand after several conversations that the idea was that these would be revisited, and it's been 21 years, and I know that it has not been an easy road with the prior owner. Everybody is acutely aware of that, and we're all glad he's gone. But we are starting a new chapter here, and we are professionals. We're not some fly-by-night operator that wants to upset the neighbors and disrupt things in the town of Cohasset. That is not who we are. That is not what we want to do. 2 of our owners are Cohasset residents. One raised their kids there and one is raising kids there. I mean, we are your friends. We are your neighbors. We do not want to create a nightclub or, this wild, 7-day-a-week operation. We are in the hospitality business, and we are going to push and fight to be able to operate that business to the best of our abilities. And that includes being able to book the barn for, as we have qualified it here, public events. And if we can bring 100 people into the barn on Thanksgiving Day to enjoy Thanksgiving dinner, then that's what we should be able to do. And that's what we're asking for.
Great, thank you. Do any of the board members have comments? I know that there are people in the public that want to speak, and what I want to do is have our questions now relative to the conditions, and then I want to talk to Marika just in general, because she's being proposed as the manager. So we'll do that after we have board questions and then public questions. So Paul has his hand up, and then Carrie.
Okay, so I was see if we can go back to 7 and 8. Scroll down or up rather. So the Hillside House, that's the former Lilac House. That's the one that has a small little room kind of detached from the other building.
Yes.
And
So
that
for the purposes of discussion, Mr. Schubert, this is the space that is above the anchor and sail.
Right. So that's where I've been there a couple of times, many, many moons ago. Now that is, it says primarily used as a function room. Would that be open up as a standalone bar?
No,
Or would that would be strictly for only function use only?
So would be for functions, but the allowance of the general public would give us the opportunity to use it for Mother's Day brunch or Thanksgiving Day.
Could that be considered a function? And you say it's a Mother's Day function?
Not if you actually, it would be considered more as a public reservation, like everybody would make their own reservation. This is why the use of a function versus general public is very different.
And just if I can interrupt, the qualifier there, Mr. Schubert, we can't restrict who can make a reservation, correct? Whereas if it's a private event.
I see, got it. So it has to do with a restriction on reservation upfront, got it.
And it's a private event and we can tell people, no, sorry, private event, you can't come in.
Got it.
Or we
Okay, so you could open it up for Mother's Day or for an event, which is not necessarily a private event, but it would be a public gathering, open as an inn type gathering.
To get into the minutia or the detail of this for just a second, if we have 100 reservations for Thanksgiving dinner in the Red Lion Inn, but we could take 150.
You could do some in that room.
We could move those 50 people to the Hills,
Got it.
and it would work very well.
Okay.
Whereas a function has maybe like one payer, there's one client. That's
one contract.
Okay, and the extension there is earlier and later. So it's 7 days a week to basically till midnight.
Yes.
And the other one was if you can roll back to, I think it's 6.
So the barn, yes.
The barn is open another 2 hours, 7 days a week. I mean,
So if you look at the previous conditions, actually the Lilac House was actually licensed for longer, for 7 days a week, 11 to 11, while the barn was Sunday through Thursday, 11 to 10, and then Friday and Saturday, 11 to 11.
Okay, so the barn is going to be open for 2 extra hours, potentially 7 days a week. And those weekdays are going to be an additional 3 hours later as opposed to the previous conditions, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, I just trying to see the hours here because looking at, the 7 days a week till 1 a.m. is, it's kind of late in this town, that's all. Okay, that's all I have.
Okay, before, any other questions from the board right now? Carrie, yes, sorry.
Yeah, quickly, just to clarify for the board and for the public watching, can you confirm again which designated spots will be for consuming alcohol on the premise? I'm a little concerned which spots will be designated for those, and then safety wise, how those will be marked throughout the whole property.
So we're not asking necessarily for additional spaces to be able to serve alcohol. All of the spaces that we are discussing and that are on this conditions list are already licensed for alcoholic beverage service. We're asking for an extension of the hours. And then relative to 7 and 8, it's an extension of the hours as well as allowing the general public, i.e. restaurant reservations, for the spaces to be able to be used for retail sales, similar to restaurants.
Okay.
And just to go back to this, like, I don't know if Jennifer could pull the floor plans.
Madam Chair, would you like me to to take down the conditions and put up the floor plans?
Sure, that would be great. But in the meantime, Jack had his hand up. If you want to ask a question, Jack, while we tee that up.
Yeah, that's a good use of our time. Back to the beginning ones where you're going to allow people standing around and drinks on the porch. So I guess the theme that I'm seeing is a lot of conditions were made 20 years ago because of concerns of the impact on the town, the residents, a lot of people consuming alcohol later at night. And I don't think those concerns have gone away. And yes, in the interim, we had what you described as a management style. I'll let your words stand to describe as the previous owners. But I don't see that there's any real change in the impact on the town. And these regulations were put in place as a compromise with the town in order for a function hall to be able to open. And so they were changed. So I guess what I'm not seeing is why we are going to undo that compromise of 20 years ago and dramatically expand the hours, the use of alcohol, and bring it to the public. And although your intentions now are just to allow a little bit of extra here and there, in fact, when you change regulations, then you have the right to do that. So that causes me great concern for the town.
Well, and I understand that concern. However, you know, the license issued is a 1 a.m. all alcohol license. Understandably, the conditions were put in place based on concern relative to the impact on the neighborhood. And I understand that there has been that impact that's been very clearly explained by two of the neighbors who wrote letters. Since we have begun operating there have not been any issues relative to special events and restaurant operations. Now, granted, we've been closed for the better part of a year, but we are, again, event professionals. We know how to do this. We know how to do it right. And we know how to mitigate and eliminate the concern that I don't think has been validated, with all due respect, Mr. Creighton. These were concerns, right? Restrictions were put in place with the understanding that there would be an opportunity to revisit them. So here we are, almost 21 years later, asking the town to revisit them. Now, you may say that the concern hasn't gone away, and I understand, and there's concern across the board, right? At every licensed establishment in the town of Cohasset, I'm sure that there's concern about what could happen. But we are asking the board for the opportunity to be able to demonstrate that we can do this the right way. And we haven't been given that chance.
Before we get to the map, Attorney Lamke has information on the stopping service regulations from within the Cohasset liquor regulations. And then just another question and sort of clarification, and nobody has to necessarily answer it, but when you, and I've been part of previous hearings for expansion of premises for Red Lion Inn under the previous owners. And one of the things that I tend to think about is that these appear to be all separate venues in a way, right? You have the jazz club, and you have the Lilac House, and you have the barn, and you have the restaurant, and you have the bar to the side of the restaurant, and you have the outdoors. So like cumulatively, it sounds overwhelming. And but it never is all operational at the same time. And I think that's something that we have to think about. And I wonder whether, you know, like if we list all the capacities in all the rooms and say, oh my God, you could conceivably have 500 people, you know, pounding beers at the same time, which is not realistic, but that's sort of what it looks like when we look at a list. So, you know, I wonder if there's other ways of giving you the opportunity to expand into the Lilac House or whatever it's called on special occasions that doesn't blanket, you know, 7 days a week, 10 a.m. to 1 a.m. and I don't know if there's an answer, but that might be something for council to think about. Are there ways that we can permit occasional uses, or that we can't have more than 300 people on the premises, or whatever the number is, at the same time in 8 different locations, with one liquor manager kind of thing. Just something to ponder.
Just briefly answer that, Madam Chair. Yes, the board can attach certain conditions whereby certain areas can be used at certain times to give that flexibility that the applicant is seeking. The board's rules and regulations, section 29, provide that you cannot solicit or accept an order for alcoholic beverages within 15 minutes prior to the hour stated on the license for cessation of liquor service, which is the closing hours. And all bottles and glasses and other beverages must be cleared from tables within 30 minutes of the closing hour. So if your closing hour is 1 a.m., you have like a half hour after that, within a half hour of that to clear out.
Thank you. Okay, Jen, just to answer Carrie's question and kind of just walk us through the different spaces.
Sure. So this is the area above this is above the it was the Lilac House, which is where the Anchor and Sail is. This is above. This is in one of the locations that they're.
And it's basically an open space where tables get set up for an event.
Correct. This is the tavern and the pub. I don't know. I mean, this is, if I'm correct, this is the.
So, yeah, we have the pub on the right hand side, the tavern in the middle, with the long room on the side, and the deck going along it on South Main Street, and then the garden on the very left side here.
So this is in the rocks. That's right along South Main. This is South Main.
Yeah. Here we have the barn with the mezzanine view. So the second floor.
Second floor, first floor.
But relative to the conditions, I believe that the left diagram with the shaded area is the 3rd floor, and right, Guillaume?
Yeah.
Because the 1st floor is technically where the kitchen is, sort of at ground level. The 2nd floor is the main sort of function, and then on the left is with the shaded area is the mezzanine above.
Okay.
This is the basement.
Yeah, yes.
And this aerial.
Yes.
The barn and the,
Yeah, so if we scroll down, we actually have the yellow square here is the Hillside House. And I actually did not list the garden, but it's right here in the middle, yes.
Right there.
Okay. Great, that's very helpful.
Would you like me to stop sharing?
Stop sharing, that would be great. So if it's okay with the board, what I'd like to do is invite any of the public who would like to make comments to come in and do so. They can be promoted, I believe.
We have a comment request from Jean and Alex Dippold at 93 South Main Street. I am promoting now.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I may,
Yes.
if there are any questions regarding the existing zoning, the previous zoning, I'm here to answer any questions you may have about the existing zoning decisions if they should come up.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
I do not see the Dippold.
I see them, they're here on my
Oh,
screen.
they're already promoted. Okay, perfect. Got it.
So there they are. Welcome, Jean and Alex. Good evening.
Hi.
I'll give you the floor.
All right. Well, thank you for hearing our comments, and thank you for considering the letter that we wrote. The public notice was the first time we heard of this, the first time that we are meeting the manager of the Red Lion Inn is through this forum. No one has come to us and talked to us about this application, just to make clear in terms of the record and outreach to the neighbors. With respect to the decision before the board today, and I'm sure Attorney Lamke will correct me if I get anything wrong here, but fundamentally what I think the board is needing to do is to assess the public need, including with respect to the expansion of these liquor licenses. And fundamentally the factors that will be considered, including in any legal proceeding relating to the board's decision, look to a variety of factors in terms of the public need, starting with, for example, the pre-existing licenses in the area. And so we just did a quick Google search of what the local restaurants and what their hours are. For example, Bia's, Dooley's, Lenny's, Ava Cucina. These restaurants all close at 10 o'clock according to their website. I'm assuming that they're correct, with the exception of Dooley's that is open until 11 p.m. on Sunday, I believe. And we think that this is a reflection of both the public need within the village, but also the recognition of this board over the years in terms of what is appropriate given the fact that the village is surrounded by residential neighborhoods. Another factor that is considered by higher courts when considering license applications is traffic and noise. So at least from our experience, the only noise that arises in our neighborhood results from when guests exit the Red Lion Inn. So now the practical impact is that for our property and those within the neighborhood, which is, as you know, quite densely populated, will be, instead of guests exiting at 10 p.m., it will be at 1 a.m., which is a dramatic impact for us. Now, some of you have been to our property. Mr. Lubitz, you've come over and walked inside our house and on the property lines. And Dr. Schubert, when this application last came up, I appreciate that you came over and you saw not only the proximity to the Red Lion Inn's parking lot where guests exit out of the barn, but also the fact that unfortunately there is no screening, no buffers, notwithstanding the 2,000 special permit issued by this town, namely the planning board. And the failure to maintain those buffers has resulted, unfortunately, in an inordinate amount of noise and light pollution. So when people exit, the result is my children, who have bedrooms close to that, are awakened. And it's a concern that if you're letting people out at 1 a.m., particularly if it's a public function or a big function, that is going to create, every time you try to supersize the amount of people in every space to maximize profits, because you're trying to make up, understandably, for this year, that still is going to have an impact, not only on my property, but I would suggest on the neighborhoods as well. And we asked the board to consider that. And to the extent that anyone on the board is interested in coming to our property, like Dr. Schubert did earlier, we're happy to invite you, as well as the new manager to the Red Lion Inn, as well as you, Mr. Marconi, to the extent that you're interested in seeing it directly for yourself. But I do have to admit this is a source of frustration, because when the liquor license application, when this group first took over this a couple of years ago, we literally had the same conversation with them about the landscaping, about the lack of buffer, and said, hey, listen, we realize you're new, we want to give you a fresh start, but this is a big issue for us. We really would ask you to maintain and improve these buffers, because this is a key issue. And
one of the issues that came up, and I'm happy to go ahead and share my emails with this as well, is through January last year through July 17th, I had a series of back and forths with folks at the Red Lion Inn regarding the fence that was standing, and it was actually down for basically 7 months there during that period of time. So I have pictures, I have a series of emails I'm happy to share that with the folks too, if you'd like to see it. The only time we actually got a response from the Red Lion Inn was
and to be clear, this is the new management.
This is new management. It was on July 17th. It was the day after we got a request from them about They're going to consider seeking a special permit to go ahead and have outdoor weddings. So it wasn't until there was a business need or interest that we were told a week later that the fence would be fixed. So that's it. Just it's just this sort of ongoing relationship creates a challenge for us to go ahead and trust that we can work with this new ownership group.
Yes, we would like a fresh start, and we are we have been cautiously optimistic, and frankly, we have not been pressing, including pressing the town on the failure to comply with the special permit in light of the pandemic to give this fresh start. But at the same time, if the expectation is that there's going to be a lot more, whether it's amount of people much later until the evening, we would hope, if not expect, that the town would require the applicants to meet the existing requirements of the license and have appropriate precautions in place. This, as people know, I'm sure on this board, the village district is not, for example, the 3A district. We don't have a 100-foot setback in between commercial and residential neighborhoods. We have people very closely linked to each other. And so when I hear we're just adding on 10 here, we're just adding an extra hour here, none of this is consistent with the current use and the other restaurants' operations within the village in terms of the amount of time. And there is a consistent maximizing wherever possible. And so I think that another factor is the opinions of the neighborhood, at least as to these neighbors. I think it's clear what they are. We would also ask that with respect to the 20 years, I don't think that they can just be washed away in terms of a fresh start. There have been numerous hearings that I know certain members of this board have sat through in terms of the evidence that has been presented, including by my neighbors and us, in terms of the impacts of the noise and light pollution, the sound pollution that comes when you expand these permits. And that's the reason, for example, you have the ZBA decision in your packet that you have today. That's the reason, for example, when the Red Lion sought to expand vis-a-vis a very large hotel/condo complex, the planning board declined that special permit because there's a long history of evidence in the record, months of hearings as to traffic, noise, and pollution with respect to the impacts of a very large complex. What happens when you start to supersize the activity there? And the last thing that I would just say, because I know time is going long, is that we're not opposed to the Red Lion making money. We want to be good neighbors and we want them to be good neighbors. We're not opposed to the existing requirements and a renewal of that. At the end of the day, though, if the Red Lion wants to seek some expansion, we think that the best approach, and we would urge the board to consider this, is the trial run that they want. And the appropriate way to do that is through a special permit process. You can get day of permits, for example, for a Mother's Day brunch, for Thanksgiving. They can come to the board and say, hey, I want to do something special with the barn, and get that exemption for that day to show through a pattern of those, them responsibly doing these events that they want to do, that they can do it. And that would go a long way, at least for us, in considering that they're responsibly running this. But right now, unfortunately, the record that we have is only a decrepit fence and no buffer. And so that's
thank you. And that was one of the questions that I would like to at some point pursue, whether we can consider doing more or less event permits as a way of meeting the needs for doing 2 functions on a Saturday, for example. So thank you very much for your comments. And then with respect to the past ZBA decisions, Jen or Attorney Lamke or Chris, somebody can comment with respect to the fencing, because I know that's been a concern. I've been up on the Dippold's property a number of times before they moved back here. I had a friend that lived there, and with the Karp family as well. And I do know that the fencing has been, is that to me is something that's in the ZBA issue or ZBA discussion more than the board's although I
Like-
want to be sensitive to, you know, promises and expectations.
May I speak, Madam Chair?
Please.
I agree. I've met with the applicants and actually had reviewed the previous decisions before meeting with them, and had asked for an update on that. And I know they planned on addressing that this evening because it is outstanding and with COVID and being closed. But it's something also that I want to put on the forefront of our radar down the building department. We have a new building inspector, and we would put this in the forefront to make sure that this particular condition is met, because I know it's been longstanding.
Thank you. So I know that the CARP, Michael and Rena CARP had submitted a letter, which I believe you've all received. Has anybody not received it? Okay, just expressing their concern, and it's a part of the record. I know that Mrs. CARP, I can see that she's in the audience. If you want to speak, please do so. Otherwise, just putting it out to the board, whether you would, you know, just some of the next steps that you might want to consider. I think it's important that we really carefully understand the conditions, the asks, the reasons for the expanded requests, the impact on the neighborhood, et cetera, et cetera. The reason the board is the liquor licensing authority is specifically so that we address the public need. Just a clarification, I believe most of the liquor licenses in town are till 1 a.m. or midnight. And Jen, it might be helpful for us to have a list of the various liquor licenses that are held by the restaurants and bars in town. I think a lot of them aren't operating within the full hours that they're licensed for, but for comparison reasons, it might be nice to see that. And, you know, I'd like to hear from my colleagues on the board about some next steps. One thing I would propose is to continue the hearing and come back as soon as we can to discuss conditions, you know, and one by one, because I think some of them are probably worthy of extending, and some we may want to keep the same. Yeah, Paul, and then Jen, I'll let you.
So a couple of things here. This is a unique property because it's downtown, and it is not just a restaurant. There is an inn associated with it. So you'll have both people staying the night there, but also entertaining with dinners and special events as well. So it's not comparable to my view. It's not comparable to Bia's. It has a little more density to it in that it's got a lot of people that can be there at any given time. One of my biggest concerns are, or two concerns I have is, you know, good fences make good neighbors. So if the fence was down that long, I mean, come on, put up the fence, put up some shielding, put up some you know, screening of shrubbery or something to blanket the noise. That's fairly straightforward, and that should be done. That to me is something very simple, can be easily accomplished. The other part of it is the length of time, the lateness of the hour downtown there, and 1 o'clock. You know, many years ago, I had my ABC liquor license and shut down bars and opened up bars and worked late at night. And from a 10 p.m. or 11 p.m. closing to the last call being at 1:45 is quite a difference, and it will be a different group of clientele from 10 to 1 versus leaving at 10 or 10:30, and that will clearly change the exiting crowd. They're going to be liquored up much more than at 10 o'clock or 10:30 with the last call. So that is probably one of my bigger concerns. It certainly could be done, you know, with events, like you said, a one-day event where you have a special event where you want to hold 2 separate events, and you could extend it on a Saturday night or a Friday night. During the week, it's to me, it's a little bit tougher to go to 1 p.m. on a weekday when you realize last call is 1:45. That's all.
Great. Any other comments from the board? Corey?
Yeah, no, I'll say, Alex, and to the new managers, I'm really excited to see Red Lion be kind of what I've heard stories about how wonderful this place was, a long time ago, and I want to see this again. And I'm really encouraged by, Alex, what you're saying about your dedication to professionalism. I have full confidence in your ability to kind of restore the Red Lion. I do think that my board members have brought up some interesting things, and Diane, Madam Chair, I like the idea of continuing this. I would, if possible, like to take a COVID-19 safe walk around. I've only been into one part of the Red Lion, but there's so much here. It's really hard to get my head around, especially because there's name changes and things that are with fancy names, and it gets a little bit confusing. So if this is something that the operators of the property would be willing to give us a walkthrough, would really help me frame what we're looking at. Then we can kind of talk about the different pieces. And, I think we do have to process more the timeframes, the restrictions, and have another conversation once we've kind of digested all this stuff a little bit better.
Thanks, Corey. Jack had his hand up, and then Carrie.
Well, let Carrie go first. Because I
Okay,
think
Carrie.
she should put her hand up a little bit earlier.
I think you beat me, Jack, but you're being a gentleman.
Moving
Not my
along,
nature,
people.
Carrie.
All right,
Running
Come
behind.
on. I'm
No,
not a sexist.
Alex and Ted and everyone in Guillaume, I really am excited about getting back into being able to have dinner and drinks at the Red Lion and have events there. And believe me, my heart goes out to everyone in the hospitality industry right now. I know how hard this has been. It's brutal. And I know you're all trying hard to make this a great space. I second what Corey said, though. I would love to do a walkthrough just so we can better visualize what you're talking about. I think that would be a great idea. If there was a way that we could make this happen while building, the barriers that Dippold talked about and stuff, where we can actually make this a place where everyone's happy and we can make it work, I'm hoping we can do that.
Absolutely. And if I may, I've been here for a little over a year and a half, and excluding the one almost full year of COVID, there's been a lot of projects and accomplishments that we've done to the property and to the properties, plural, as you all know that Crescent Arboretum and Atlantica have been challenging as well. There's been a tremendous amount of money put in the properties, and a lot of different new issues that would surface. And I know we had my colleague Pierre Pratt actually had a full landscaping plan in place, some quotes, some tours, some drawings, as far as the parking lot, the fencing, and the Crescent Arboretum development, moving some of the major trees to be able to fence the nose barrier and the view as well for our neighbors. And we want to assure that we are dedicated to make it work and to make it better. I want to say great, but better for you. Definitely much better than with the previous ownership. So there's a lot of developments that we're all trying to accomplish. We did some of the operational emergencies as fixing the roof and trying to look at leaks and some other major big necessities. And you are absolutely in the right. All this needs to be addressed, needs to be fixed, and we are. I know I'm going to speak for the partners as well, that everybody is definitely very well aware, and we want to make it right for the town, for the neighbors, and for the people of Cohasset.
Thank you. I'm going to suggest a couple of things. Marika, I promised would say hello to you. So if you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself and just giving us a little bit of your hospitality experience.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
did our colleague Jack have his comments?
Oh, I'm sorry, Jack. Yes.
Right.
Sorry,
I was-
Marika. One more second.
It's all right. I was practicing being well behaved. It's sometimes difficult.
You were doing a good job.
Well, let me see if I can undo that.
Please don't.
But I do think the difference between 10 o'clock and 1 o'clock is significant. And we also the public need of what these licenses are to fill a public need. And I don't see that there's a public need for increased, partying or events from that 10 to 1 o'clock. I see no public need. I mean, Cohasset is by its nature, the character of Cohasset is kind of a sleepy little town. I think that's why we want to try to keep it that way as much as possible. And the things that were agreed upon as a condition of allowing this, they were agreed upon as a condition to allowing this, were meant to preserve our town of Cohasset and the character to which it makes it very special. And I, for one, think we have a kind of like an obligation to preserve that. But I do think that we need to, this is a deal that was made. And yes, they obviously, and I do wish them well, by the way. I used to love to eat at the Red Lion, and I really lament its demise and look forward to it coming back. But when you buy something, that's what you bought. You bought an inn in a sleepy kind of little town with, we roll up our sidewalks at 10 o'clock. That's what you bought. And an agreement was made to do that. And I really think we need to respect the sanctity of that. If there's some changes that need to be made, I think we could perhaps look at them. But I do think that we need to, first of all, it needs to be widely publicized. I just got this afternoon. The people in town, I got letters, as we all did. So putting it off and having a robust discussion, I think makes sense. So I'm in favor of that. But again, this is a special little town, and we want to make sure that whatever happens at that property is consistent with Cohasset's character. Thank you.
Thanks, Jack. I will let Marika just introduce herself and say hello, and then I'm going to wrap up this portion. I noticed Rena Karp joined the group, and if Rena, after Marika speaks, if you would like to speak, I will entertain that, and then we're going to move along, probably with the continuing the hearing. Marika, welcome.
My name is Marika Edlund. I've been with the Catered Affair for over 5 years. I was managing or assistant managing at Atlantica, and I'm being set forth to manage at the Red Lion Inn. I have had more than 18 years of hospitality industry in different, specifically in catering, both in San Francisco area and out here. So I'm well versed in what is needed to make sure the standards are upheld.
Great, thank you very much. I also want to say what I don't want this is to become a weekly 3-hour discussion. I would like to propose that we continue the hearing, and we can talk amongst ourselves about what date that it would be continued to, but at that time we need to be prepared to make decisions on the conditions. It will be obviously a public hearing, but we have experience with creating public hearings that go on and on and on, and we're not in the business of doing that for either our businesses or our residents. We all want to see the Red Lion Inn. I can't tell you how many times people say, I just want to go to the Red Lion Inn and have a hamburger and a glass of wine, and we all look forward to that. The devil's in the details, and I ask all of my board members to do whatever it takes between now and the continuation of the hearing to get as much of, do your own research as possible, so that we can come back and make some decisions that make sense for everybody, and allow this business to get back up and running and flourishing as soon as possible. One suggestion, I do think if site visits are possible and easy enough and can be done safely, that's great. But another thing we could consider is just getting a video recording of the facility, even just to show at the beginning of our next meeting. So I'll put it out there. If anybody would like to make any kind of a motion or statement from the board. Oh, Rena, I'm sorry. Rena Karp, are you interested in speaking?
I promoted in case, but I'm not sure.
Okay, all right. So the Carps did submit a letter, their neighbors with many of the same concerns that the Dipholds articulated. It's part of the record. So I just want to make sure they're heard, and their position has been presented. So
I'm comfortable making, I'd like to make a motion to continue this hearing to, when is our next select board date? It looks like the
9th.
February 9th. That gives us a solid 2 weeks to review this, which I'm comfortable with. So I would make a motion to continue this hearing until February 9th to give the board members a chance to review the property and further consider the changing of the stipulations within the licensing request.
Jim, hang on one sec, Alex. Attorney Lamke?
Yes, yeah, I just, that's fine. I just wanted to ask the applicants if that was agreeable with them, and in the meantime, they could coordinate site visits with any of the board members who want to take a visit to the place, and also would give them time to put together a short video of it. Are they agreeable to that?
Yes, absolutely. Anyone who'd like to come for an in-person tour, Guillaume, myself would be happy to take you around the property. There are a few more points that I wanted to make relative to the parking area. It sounds like we're gonna push that off perhaps to the next meeting. However, I would ask the board if it were possible to approve the license tonight with the existing conditions and have a follow-up meeting regarding the conditions. Unfortunately, the process involves this license application being sent to the state, to the Alcoholic Beverages Control Commission. That process and the review can take anywhere from 30 to 45 days, during which time we cannot be open. Obviously, we're not doing a lot of business anyway, but the quicker we get the license to the ABCC, the more quickly it can come back.
So there's a consideration, and Corey, your motion is floating. It hasn't been seconded. So if it's okay,
That's fine. We can kill it dead. Yep.
I'll ask Attorney Lamke.
I withdraw the motion.
The suggestion is that we approve what would be the liquor license and the victular license and the license manager, so that it can, with the conditions that currently exist.
Yeah, yes, the board can do that, and at its next meeting, it can reconsider those.
The conditions.
Yes, if they're amending their conditions, that's what they'd be seeking to do. If you approve it with the existing conditions, and then they want to amend that license, technically it should be another application to amend the license for the proposed conditions. But you can do
Corey?
that.
Okay.
The conditions are local.
Who's talking? Okay, Alex. Okay. I'll ask the applicant. I'm sensitive to not kind of going around in circles or doing this multiple times. If the applicant had a preference, would the applicant prefer us to approve the current conditions for a year, or have a 2-week delay and then discuss the new version of that application rather than going through this process again?
Well, the preference would be to submit the application to the state, assuming that it's approved by the town with the current conditions, but then continue the conversation regarding the conditions, which are sort of locally.
I think the technical challenge with which Attorney Lamke did was we would end up closing this hearing with a vote to accept, issue the license with the current conditions, and then it would be a separate hearing with separate requests for any kind of edits to the conditions.
Okay, but not a new application for the license.
No, we
not a new application for a license, but
sorry, go ahead.
It would be an application to amend the license that has been approved.
Yeah.
Right, it would be an amendment to the current license.
And my understanding is that would not need to go to ABCC. So it would be the most efficient way to move this ball forward, because the ABCC does not have to necessarily approve the local licensing conditions.
That's
That's correct.
But I always recommend that a board still send any changes to a license to the ABCC, so they'll have it on file just in case their investigators go out and they see something, they don't know whether or not that was permitted or not. It's always good to have it in the ABCC file, which people can look at. But that doesn't interfere with anything.
Right. Jack, you had a question, comment?
Yeah, I was just saying that my understanding is this allows you guys to stay in business. Now I understand I used to do a lot of liquor license stuff in Boston, more hours than I want to remember. But so this allows you, your suggestion, to continue, and then you don't lose your license, have to do all that. So, I'm fine with it. We can discuss how we're going to proceed on this, but at least we keep the doors open at the Red Lion Inn in the interim.
Okay, Jen?
So if we could just clarify, just so I know my next steps. So if the board chooses to continue to approve this meeting, approve the liquor, the common vic, and entertainment this evening, it would go to the ABCC and you would just continue the discussion on the conditions.
Correct.
And also just to clarify, the liquor, they do not have a liquor license or any of these licenses at this point, so they're not
Correct.
open at all. So
Right.
that's why we wanted to get it to the ABCC, so
Yep.
that process could begin. I just want to clarify for the public.
Thank you,
Well,
Jen.
That's my understanding, which is why I think this is a reasonable compromise.
I agree. The only question I have, and it's for Attorney Lamke, is whether, how many votes this requires, and especially because we do need to name the manager, or is that part of the liquor license and the common vic license?
A lot of boards will approve the common victular first, because for an inn holder's license or restaurant license, you need to have a common victular license to start with. So what I've seen more often than not is a motion to approve the common victular license, and you can combine them all into one motion. And then a motion to approve the alcohol license and the appointment of the manager.
Okay.
If you can read that over so I can just say I make that motion, I'll do that.
So is either Carrie or Paul or anybody teed up to just make the motion, or do you want me to go through it and ask for somebody to move it?
I make a motion, we approve the common victual license for the Red Lion Inn operating LLC, DBA The Red Lion. It's a one-year term, correct?
Through
Yes.
December, yeah,
Through December
31st.
31, 2021.
okay. Is
Point
there a
of order,
second?
Madam Chair.
Yep.
I would be remiss if I didn't say I'm not quite sure I'm done with the discussion that was being placed, and I'm not quite sure I'm at the point yet to approve
Take a
this
vote.
thing. If I may ask a few more questions, if that's okay.
Yeah, we have the motion. Yeah, if it's all right, Paul, if you want to hold off, where we could just get a second and then go into discussion.
Whatever you like, madam. We could do, the motion's on the floor. I can withdraw it, or we can discuss and then go to a second.
If we have a second, I'd prefer to do that technically for the discussion on the motion. Or Corey, or you want to discuss not the motion?
I would like to hear, I mean, we kind of went off track. I wasn't fully done with my questioning of the applicant regarding his preferences. What I'm worried about here is we're setting a little bit of an expectation that if we approve this in 2 weeks, we will approve the reverse. And I want to be clear that this isn't properly functioning of our board, where we, do one thing for expeditious purposes and then we just fix it, piecemeal down the line. I think that does a disservice to the neighbors and breaks us into a two-step process, which I think doesn't serve the town as well. So my question with, to the applicant was serious in that if you'd like us to approve the existing conditions, I think it would be appropriate for this board to say, we're going to see how you do with all these, these ideas you've brought up. We're going to give you a time period. Maybe it's 90 days or maybe it's 6 months. But I think bringing this back in front of the board in 2 weeks is not a good process for this.
No, I understood. Understood.
So, I mean, Alex, would you prefer us, have you operate for 6 months or 3 months so you can, talk to the neighbors and reestablish stuff, and then you can bring your revisions in front of us? Is that something you'd be comfortable with?
Yeah, I would be. I would be.
And I would just suggest, I don't think 2 weeks we necessarily, that was if we were to continue the hearing, we would just, to give ABCC a full package. I think
appreciate
we would be approving, or we would take a vote to give them the licenses that they need to operate through December 31st, 2020, and leave it at that. And there's no 60-day or 30-day or even 2 weeks. I think it's up to the applicants whether they want to come back and work with the neighbors, or, we're approving the conditions that currently exist right now. And I think it's up to the applicant working with, hearing our conversation in this meeting and knowing what we're interested in, to decide whether they want to amend their license at a future meeting, whether it's 2 weeks or 2 months or 5 months.
Sure.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Thank you.
My colleagues?
Yeah, I just, it's the impression that there was a default or a expectation is what I was worried about from the board. So if it's all understood that this is something that we aren't going to be looking at immediately, but we are going to be looking at in the future based on performance, I think that's fantastic. I think it does serve the purposes of launching it, but also serves to protect the neighborhood, in that we're not expanding anything until we have a little bit of proof is in the pudding, trust but verify would kind of be my take on this. So thank you all for your patience with me on this.
Thanks, Corey. So Paul, your motion still exists for the common vic
There's a
license?
motion on the floor.
Okay,
I'll
and is there a
second
second? Great, thank you. Roll call vote on the common victular license for Red Lion Inn.
Jack Creighton, aye.
Corey Evans, aye.
Diane Kennedy, aye.
Paul Schubert, aye.
Carrie Thompson, I.
Okay, the next motion would be for an all alcoholic beverage license for the Red Lion Inn Operating LLC.
And you can approve the manager in that motion too.
Okay. And Paul, you want to make it, or you want me to say it? Marika Edlund is the proposed manager.
Make a motion to approve Marika Edmonds, the proposed manager
Edlund.
for alcohol beverage control manager for the Red Lion Inn, doing business as the Red Lion. Also in this motion, approval of the liquor license for all alcohol inn holder license for the Red Lion Inn Operating LLC, doing business as the Red Lion, for the calendar year 2021.
Is there a second?
Second.
You
Any
want to
discussion from the
include,
board?
you want to include subject to the conditions.
Subject to the conditions presented this evening of the existing previous license.
From 2000, maybe.
Carrie, you had a second there?
Yep, second.
Okay. Any discussion among the board? Roll call vote, beginning with Jack.
Jack Creighton, aye.
Corey Evans, aye.
Diane Kennedy, aye.
Paul Schubert, aye.
Carrie Thompson, I.
And the last motion is for entertainment, Paul.
Oh,
You're on
muted.
mute.
Darn it.
It's so much better in person.
Make a motion for a entertainment license for the Red Lion Inn Operating LLC, doing business as the Red Lion Inn for calendar year 2021.
Is there a second?
Subject to the same conditions as the.
Subject to
Most
the
recent-
same conditions as the previous entertainment license from 2020 at the same premises.
Second.
Roll call.
Jack Creighton, aye.
Corey Evans, aye.
Diane Kennedy, aye.
Paul Schubert, aye.
Carrie Thompson, I.
Great. We are done. We need to take a motion. Thank you all very much. Thanks for your patience. We got through a lot, and I look forward to not only opening of all these businesses in town, but future discussions about really bringing this back to life again. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Paul?
Before,
Yeah,
oh, sorry.
so I just wanted to mention that it's entirely up to the Red Lion to come back with us with any subsequent amendments they wish to discuss. This does not prevent you from doing that, and we would be delighted to see any input that you may want to consider for the Red Line. We want to keep that Red Line open. It's an anchor for the town, and it has been a horrible year for many of us in the hospitality industry, especially. It has been breathtaking to see the change. It's just been horrible. So
I appreciate
we're looking forward to, I want to go down there and have dinner 2 nights a week there as soon as it's open.
And yeah, right, and book private parties just because we can. And I also think let's let this be the beginning of more conversations, not only with the neighbors, but with us to resolve things so that making expanded our decisions is a lot easier for all of us. We want to
Absolutely.
make it right. Great. Thank you, Corey.
Thank you all very much for your time.
Just a quick question for you guys. The Cohasset Economic Task Force has been talking, we're working on a lot of stuff here. If we wanted to bring you guys into some of the broader discussions, should it be, Mr. Marconi, Mr. Lubitz, Guillaume, who is the kind of the person we should reach out to if we wanted to loop you guys in the conversation about some of the downtown stuff we're working on?
I'm happy to be a part of that.
Okay, great. I appreciate that. I'll send you an email. Thank you.
And I want to say myself too, I'm on location anytime, so.
Oh, great. That's wonderful. Thank you.
Great. Thank you all very much. Really appreciate your time. And I believe we need a motion to close the hearing. Jen, did you need to say something?
Saying goodnight.
You're saying goodnight. Good night. Thank you for your hard work on this.
I move we close the hearing.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Zach Creighton, aye.
Ray Evans, aye.
Diane Kennedy, aye.
Paul Schubert, aye.
Harry Thompson, I.
Okay. Thank you all so much for putting up with that. So getting through that. I lost my agenda. I don't know how. I haven't moved in a few hours.
It's
Next up is
fiscal
the
update.
fiscal update, financial
Fiscal update. Great.
director, Piat, and fiscal year 21 budget through December 31 COVID grant funding.
We are an hour and 5 minutes behind. Yeah.
Yeah. That's,
Hey, I
Poor
am.
planning on my
there's
part.
Don. There we go.
hey, Don.
Good evening.
So you all have the packet again. I apologize for its late arrival to all of you. There wasn't a whole lot of change. I mean, we're still on course as we were in November. With that said, I'll flip to Don to walk you through.
Yeah, Chris, if you want to, again, this is going to be another quick update. I've been loving these monthly updates because, month to month, there really shouldn't be too much significant change. So
And they can be quick.
let's do that. General fund revenues year to date, 50.5%, right on target. Continuing on, local receipts, all except motor vehicle excise, meet or exceed our expectations. We're still down about 4.6% from last year, and the big driver of that is just the investment income. But we're still within line in the budget on investment income. I believe we're actually at 80% of our budget. So sometimes the percentages and the year-to-year change really don't paint a great picture, but in these scenarios, we're doing well. And to remind everybody, our local receipt projections were decreased 10% for the budget, so only being down about 4.6 year over year. We're really actually in decent shape. And our first big commitment for the fiscal year has come in, hasn't been posted yet. I believe they won't be due until February. We're only down about 38,000. It came in just over 1.3 million, down about 2.8% from last year's first commitment. And again, as I mentioned, we decreased our local receipts, including motor vehicle excise, by 10%. So this is only a piece of the overall annual commitments. As we've mentioned before, there's one large commitment in February, and then we continue on through the year as the RMB sends us those commitments. So we'll be continuing to track that activity, but it is good news to see that we weren't too far off from last year's first commitment of the calendar year. On the expenditure side, we're at 49.8%. I'm not seeing any issues within the various departments. As I noted, there's been about $370,000 spent since July 1 related to COVID expenses. The majority of that you'll see in the public safety budget under emergency management. There's actually a specific line item in there that I track all the COVID related expenses. And again, since the CARES money has been extended till next year, instead of doing a large journal entry at December 31st, I'm just continuing my tracking mechanism through the general fund and other funds in my spreadsheet that will then be reclassed to the various grants at year end. And while we're in the general fund, if you guys don't mind, I'll just give the brief update on COVID now, if that's okay. So we spent about $805,000. We were allotted $750,000 for CARES. A good portion of that delta will be reimbursed by FEMA. So between work with myself and Glenn has submitted multiple applications to FEMA for reimbursement. We submitted about $218,000 to FEMA. That is inclusive of this 805. So it's a little bit of a balancing act. So when I say it sounds like we've overspent the grant, offsetting receipt from FEMA will offset that. So it does appear that we'll have plenty of money to get us to the end of the fiscal year. And at this point, I meet with Glenn on a weekly basis. We keep up to date with what is needed in town, what's going on, what our future needs from now, especially through the end of the fiscal year. So that is all being tracked and continue to be managed on a tight ship. So really not anything else to update on COVID at this point. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
I'll start off with just really quickly to tell the board, I believe we're getting our audit for FY20. Our auditors are going to come in at our next meeting. So we'll review that. That's going to be another power meeting. But just with respect to all the work that we heard about earlier, just setting up the website and setting up the registration portals for COVID vaccines and the amount of staff time that necessarily is going to be involved in any level of vaccinations going forward. Where is that money coming from?
That is a great question, Diane. I don't know. I really don't. All I've had are discussions and people telling me where they think funding is coming from. I've heard $45 per shot from maybe the state or
whatever insurance carrier.
Whatever insurance carrier.
Yeah.
I've heard that FEMA is going to be reimbursing up to 100% for the operating cost itself. I have not gotten any of these memos, and I tried doing a little research on the $45 reimbursement. I frankly don't know, but I know this is the direction that Cohasset is going in, and we're just going to have to really just track those expenses.
Well, and that's what I was, is that, Chris, is that like, how are you tracking it? And then how will that kind of play itself out until we know where the funding source is coming from?
So Don is going to track it, and he can talk about that more in detail as part of the whole COVID expense. He's setting up a separate line for the vaccine clinics. Now, one of the good things is that, PPE and a lot of that stuff, we have it, thankfully. So we don't have to buy a lot more stuff.
Thank you, Glenn. Yeah,
it's really personnel costs that are going to be in.
Yes.
And that's primarily for the vaccinators and the paramedics, because we need to get paramedics, as you heard already, on staff to watch people after the shots. And we need vaccinators. And again, we have heard from the Department of Health that there is, reimbursements per shot and all of that. And, it's a work in progress from the state's perspective, right? I mean, we do get reimbursed for other things. We've signed up tons. Paula just ran through a bunch of documents yesterday and today. So we have confidence that this is clearly going to be tracked. I have confidence that people will make good. As Don said, there's a degree of uncertainty as to exactly how it's going to be made good, because I don't want to say they're making it up as they go along, but to some extent,
They're making it up as they're
along.
going along. Yeah.
That said, there's a lot of money that's been committed by the federal government for vaccine stuff, and this is vaccine stuff, right? So, we've already done 60 shots for first responders and folks working in clinics. So we're going to get reimbursed for that at some point, I expect. And for the public, we'll see how that shakes out. It's something we're watching closely, and Pam and Mary are plugged in the Department of Health on that too. So it's something we're going to have to watch. That said, we are kind of, Don and I kind of talked before the end of the week, spin up what it looks, we know that, as Chief Silvey said, we know what the model looks like, we know what the staffing is. So it's just a multiple, right? One clinic is X dollars, 2 clinics are X times 2. And then if there's any set expenses for the whole thing, like, for example, the PR stuff, we're kind of paying for that now. If there's special stuff that we need to do, like a video or something like that, that would be extra. The updates to the website are all covered by our current expenses. So the nice thing is that's already kind of baked in. Early days of COVID. I see Chief Sylvia there in case I missed something. We're gonna have to watch this and track it really hard. The good news is I think the federal government's going to work incredibly hard to get this straightened out. So I'm hopeful that this will all shake out at the end of the day. And as Don pointed out, we are going to have some additional funding, hopefully available over the coming months as they sort through the FEMA reimbursements. But when it comes to shove, we can use that money for those purposes, because this is the number one priority now is vaccinations. Wear the same mask for 3 or 4 days in a row, I will. And I'll take mine home and wash them by hand every day, whatever I need to do, right? We got to that kind of stuff as we need. Not for first responders, obviously. We got to have all the top quality stuff. I think we'll be okay.
Okay. Any other questions about budget, COVID, money, Jack?
Yes, I'd like to proudly announce that we got from the Norfolk County their Community Preservation Act monies for 2020, and Cohasset will get $147,775. And of course, that money is put in our CPC fund. So got a little bit of extra money.
Good, good to know. They're still
I
matching
think we're gonna
that.
need it.
Yes, we're going to start talking about some of the CPC requests next week. Any other questions on the budget? Great, thank you. Dawn, thank you so much. It is nice having monthly updates.
You want to do water and sewer? Or you want to just bounce over those? You don't have to do it if you don't want to.
They're pretty consistent with the prior year. We're up.
Just give us the net. Yeah.
We're ahead of schedule in both funds, both largely driven by usage being up. Water usage has been through the roof since COVID. Since sewer is based on water usage, their bills and commitments have been up. So both water and sewer operating funds are operating well positioned at this point. And on both sides, they're well under 50% spent on their general operating expenses, both in the low 40%. So not seeing any issues in either of those funds at this point.
Okay, that's great. And we are gonna have sewer on our next agenda, I believe. So discussing both the regional decision matrix and their open seat as well. So,
great.
Okay, good.
All right.
Keep the money going. And then Chris, just really quickly, when should we expect to start talking FY22 budgeting?
We've been talking about FY22 budgeting internally now for a month or more, 2 months. We're going to be the plan is to present the budget to the board on February 23rd in a joint meeting with the advisory committee. That's the current schedule.
Okay, great.
And Don and I have more work to do. We're hoping that the first round of state budget numbers, I'm looking at my calendar, is the 27th. We think maybe tomorrow they might get released, which will give us a little indication. If you noticed, I don't know if you had a chance to look at the memo, I did include some state numbers. I mean, the state revenues are actually, I think, better than they thought they were going to be so far. They're actually up over last year. And that's taking into account, of course, we're looking at, COVID and then this time last year, right? That said, sales and use taxes are down, but income taxes are up and corporate taxes are up too. remember, Moderna is actually made here. So, the vaccine is made. There's lots of biomedical stuff. I mean, there weren't a lot of elective surgeries, but there was a whole heck of a lot of other stuff going on. So I don't know what that's going to mean. Paul watches this like a hawk even more than I do. So I think the state has a lot to sort out, but I don't think they're in as bleak a place as they thought they would be, which is hopeful for us.
Yeah, obviously the revenue projections are probably going to be the toughest part of the job. Paul?
Yeah, honestly, the revenue numbers were surprisingly better than I would have thought. With, looking at last March and April where things just clamped down and shut down, they really came back to a surprising quality, far better than I would have thought. They're almost back in. I think this month's is even above last year's this month. So it's a surprising recovery. We've adapted basically. I think.
Great. Wish we didn't have to adapt.
But that's not to say, as we've pointed out, like the retail, restaurants, retail, hotels, hammered in some cases, right? So I don't want to say that there has not been local impacts, as they have.
Right.
We're not a tourism and retail dependent town. We're a real property based town, and homes are selling like hotcakes in this town right now. So and people are modifying them. The one thing is I will quickly mention is that our building permit revenue continues to be up. We're at 75%, I think, of expected revenue halfway through the year. And this is not prime construction. I mean, a lot of permits are pulled early, but we expect more as the year goes on. So that's not going to mean new growth immediately, but it's clearly going to mean down the road that we're going to see some more stuff.
Tough. The building is tough for those of us working at home and listening to all day long. So looking forward to zoning discussions at a future meeting, Jack. Great. Thank you, Dawn. Unless anybody has any other questions, we're going to move on because, as Corey reminded me, I'm an hour behind. Try to get us out of here before, like, in 50 minutes behind. Dawn, thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
I can help. Motion to adjourn.
We still have something on the agenda, and I know we have community members waiting patiently, and I appreciate all of that, the waiting. So next up is townwide speed limits. So we had this discussion, I think it was last fall, like fall 2019 or spring, I don't even know when it was, but Chief, if you could kind of summarize the discussion that we need to have and some of the paths we need to consider.
So this has been being kicked around since about 2018. I pulled my memos. And we've basically it's a policy issue for the board to decide. And we looked at this. We had a meeting back last year in January of last year, probably just about a year ago, and the board was just gonna took a wait and see position on considering dropping the townwide speed limit to 25 miles an hour on all roads. Excluding the state roads like Route 3A and 228. So there's basically two choices. We can keep the fundamental speed limit, which is a townwide, or we can enact the recognition of the Fundamental Speed Act, which makes all roads in town 30 miles an hour, or we can drop that down to 25 miles per hour, or we can do it piecemeal. We can designate certain roads with lower or higher speed limits. And that's sort of where we stand.
And I know there are a lot of people listening to the meeting. If you're interested in speaking on this topic, if you could type your name into the question and answer, your name and address, and then we'll bring you in to make your comments. My understanding is we have what we have right now, which is kind of all over the place. We can just leave things alone, or we could consider a fundamental speed limit. Or if the other option would be to come up with a policy or a procedure or a process by which people could petition to have certain roads posted at a certain speed limit within the whatever is allowed by law. Like you can't say 5 miles per hour or 70 or whatever. Is that right?
Yeah, correct. And the problem with that solution is you end up with a ton of signs and different speed limits throughout town. So it gets, the streets get very visually busy with signage. And I know, that's sometimes not, and poor Diane.
Diane hates signs.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out a polite way to say that, but yeah.
No, there's no other way to say it.
Yeah. The other way we could do it is do what Situate does. They post every entrance to the town with a sign advising people that the townwide speed limit is 25 miles per hour unless otherwise posted. And that's worked for Situate.
Yeah. That's sort of the direction I would like to have us consider, because, the idea of not only the signs, aside from my own thing about signs, literally most people believe people speed on their street. So we could literally have 50 or 60 people trying to come before us to post their street at a certain, and just coming up with a procedure for that, I think is messy and not equal. I do think there's a speeding problem everywhere.
It is problematic, with doing it piecemeal. But one of the things people also have to realize is just because we change the fundamental speed law in town doesn't mean everybody's suddenly going to stop speeding.
Right.
There's, we have enforcement and we have voluntary compliance. But I think the board really has to take a hard look at, traffic calming measures. And what I mean by that is the only thing that's really been proven, I've read every study out there on this, the only thing that's really been proven to work is actually physical, don't mind the dogs, a small prison riot.
You know whose it was.
Small prison riot in the other room. But
it's late. They're just mad about the long meeting.
They are. But yeah, traffic calming measures, and a lot of times that's, clearly marking like the gateway, say the entrance to Cohasset Village with some type of physical barrier with proper signage that really people have to, it causes people to slow down. And the other thing are digital, radar speed boards, but those are expensive, like out on Sawyer Street. Sometimes they shine in people's windows too.
In French.
Those people put pillowcases over them. But those are a possibility too, and those are proven to work as well because it catches your attention. I know, personally it works for me. I see it, you're doing, 35 or 36 and you slow down. Traffic calming is really something that we should look at. Again, it's not going to be a magic pill if we change the speed limit. People aren't going to suddenly slow down. And just enforcement is sporadic. It depends on what else we're doing.
Right. Well, and that's the other reason for, in my mind, not going to allowing people a process to petition to change their road, because the expectation is going to be that there is enforcement, and there's just limited resources, period, and it's up to you, Chief Quigley, to decide where enforcement needs to take place and when. And obviously, the school streets or the village is more important to have enforcement than my small cul-de-sac, which I might petition to get, a speed limit down.
Yeah. And people have to realize, there's, there may be 3 cars on the road, and, if someone's, for writing reports, identity theft, domestics, those officers, 2 of those officers are going to be out of the picture for, a couple of hours. So, it's sporadic at best.
Comments from the board, and then I'll see if anybody in the public wants to speak. Corey?
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things. Diane, you mentioned, and Chief Quigley mentioned the sign in front of Situate, and I like that as a base model to say, this is what the town is, and we can post it otherwise. I think one trouble is that the first sign entering town, especially from Hingham, says that the speed limit is 35, and I think that gets into people's heads, and then they go around town. I live on North Main Street, so I see these people go by. A couple other things kind of to share, and Chief Quigley, as you said, you probably read up on this, but kind of the 25 to 40 mile per hour zone is where the chances of fatalities or severe injuries go from low percentage to pretty much guaranteed. And you may think that I'm going 40 instead of 30. That may mean that the increase of killing somebody goes up 2, 3, 4 times. And that's a decision we make casually. If you're going from one end of town to the other end of town, I think it's max 3.5 miles. So you're talking less than 2 minutes of a trade-off in order to save someone's life. And I think that's a reasonable thing for our town to ask our residents and visitors of this town, is to take the lives of our residents seriously. And this is really important today because everyone's home. I see more kids riding around on bikes. I mean, now it's snowing outside, and walking and running than I've ever seen before. And, I don't want to be looking at this 6 months from now and having something happen and miss the opportunity to make this clearer. So this is important to me. It's also personally, so I was involved. I was a pedestrian, was hit by a car about 15 years ago. So this is something I do have a personal passion about. And I do like the idea of having a base level speed limit, and then we can take input from the town and through public safety, what roads are safe to increase that. I think that's a really sensible way to move forward.
Quick question on signage. I see your hand, Jack. 1 sec. Quick question on signage, Chief Quigley. If we were to post kind of at certain anchors entering town, do we have any flexibility as to the kind of sign? So that, or do we have to buy the state, regulated ugly sign that says something? Or could we say, welcome to Cohasset, where we value our lives, speed limit is 25 or whatever?
So there's a manual. It's called the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices, the MUT-CD. Yeah, and any regulatory sign has to be consistent with that.
Okay.
As long as you have a speed limit sign or regulatory sign that's consistent with that, you can add other signs under it or over it. So that's okay.
That's just more signs. Doesn't work with me. Jack?
Yeah. I do think one of the things in any kind of enforcement is it has to be certain and clear and reasonable. I've been driving, I drive a lot. Truth be told, I used to be a Boston cab driver. So, when I was in my teens, but the issue really is, I think, between 25 or 30, and I've gone both. And I think 30 is probably reasonable because I think it will be obeyed. 25, I think, is just a little too slow, and people are going to, quite honestly, in many things, going to be upset. I think there's only a very few roads in Cohasset in which there's any reason to go above 30, and they'd be very brief segments. And if somebody wanted to make that issue, I think we could make a special area on that. But basically, I think a uniform 30 and then dropping it to 15 in the village, makes sense. It's consistent. Everybody knows. And I think that you will find that it's kind of counterintuitive. But if it's a reasonable thing, they're more likely to do 30, 33. But if it's 25, they're just going to say, the heck with it, this is stupid. So I'm really strongly in favor of a reasonable uniform, but I think the thing should be 30, and I think we'll get uniform buy-in from our citizens on that.
So we didn't put this on the agenda with, and just promoting the agenda through to the town with the expectation that we would vote. But if I understand and reading everybody's comments, should we move forward with a proposal for a uniform speed limit? And we can actually have that as an agenda item. Board will vote on establishing a uniform speed limit, and then we'll have that conversation about, and maybe that's something, Chief, that we could get some statistics and data for about whether that is 25 or 30 and what specific impacts, where is that going to make a difference? Does it make a difference around the common? I know there are people that have reached out, involved with the nursery school or just the general traffic around the common, and is 25 a material difference to them to 30, or does that in terms of priority levels as well, is that going to negatively impact? So just to understand data a little more so that we can make that decision, what that number is.
Yeah, and it's based, it comes down to exactly what Corey had mentioned. This is math, and it's reaction time and versus speed. So I can pull the numbers for our enforcement numbers for the average speed that people drive over the speed limit. And that said, most officers will give you anywhere between 12 and over before they even stop you. And before you get a ticket, it might be 15 over. It's totally the officers have full discretion when it comes to that, and that's part of that's recognized standard by the state, that the officers have discretion. I couldn't say you'll write everybody up that goes over five miles an hour over the speed limit. So
that's always the rumor in town when a new chief or somebody comes on. It's like, oh, they're pulling everybody over.
New sheriff in town.
New sheriff in town. Lisa Dunn has joined us. If unless the board has anything to say before, otherwise I'll ask Lisa if she'd like to make a public comment on this. And Lisa, we can't see you.
I see her here. She's on my screen.
Hi. Okay,
There she is. Hey, Lisa. Thanks for sitting with us at this long meeting.
You're welcome. It's the second one I attended. I was at the one last year. So I don't know, there's a lot of different ways to do this, but I am just going to say that we're doing nothing. And I don't think that's a good thing. Since 1994, I have tried to work with the police department sporadically to try to decrease the speed on Beach Street. It's a straightaway before the curves. It always heats up in the spring. We used to negotiate for the flashing sign. Kids, there were kids riding bikes once again, like in the 90s. They ride to the schools. I happen to be an active member on the board at First Parish. I have become acutely aware of the speeding on North Main Street. So, there are, I don't know how we do it. I happen to think that a sign, and Diane, I disagree. We all need a sign with a speed limit posted. I know that, there's all these studies about curbs and speed bumps. We're not going to be putting speed bumps in anytime soon on these roads. So let's just get to the point. And we all need a reminder of what the speed limit is. And when I go to a new town or when I'm on a new road, I need a reminder. And I see a sign and I say, oh, it's 25, and I slow down. Mm-hmm. There was a sign recently put up on North Main. It is not visible to anybody. It's been moved around. It's not visible. It needs to go further down on the common. North Main is a speedway into the village. Let me speed up. It's flat and I can go fast. And now that there's nobody parked there, I can go even faster. The sign needs to be somewhere on the common. There's a school there. There needs to be a sign that says slow school. And the approach of, I don't want to see signs. Well, there are something like 25 no parking signs on the common now. So we need to think about safety and we need to think about slowing people down. The entire loop around Little Harbor is another speedway. Let me speed up where it's, there's a great hill before the curves. Coming around on Jerusalem Road near Bow Street, people routinely go 45 miles an hour there. And there are walkers, bikers, dogs, children. And so we need to do something besides, And I think if you're going to put signs, I think that some roads you can probably go 35 in town. And that's completely appropriate, but we have 15-mile-an-hour roads as well. And I don't know how somebody's going to know, oh, I'm in Cohasset, you know, their speed limit is 25 everywhere. And oh, gee, I've crossed over into Situate. I think that certain roads need certain speed limits. And that's kind of the way safety works pretty much in all other towns and cities and states.
Great, thanks,
And,
thanks,
so,
Lisa.
great.
And one question I have, and believe me, my whole sign is safety's first. Like, I'm not going to fight if we decide that we want to post throughout certain towns. It's just, you know, it's just an aesthetic thing for me. So safety is always first. Chief, we were looking at traffic calming and some kind of an island at the bottom of the Highland Ave, North Main Street there. Is that, where does that stand? Chris might actually have the answer for that.
That's, yeah, that, you know, we couldn't really do work over the winter, so that's still in, you know, that's still in planning. So there will be some, the plan is to remember, what we put around the common was still temporary, remember?
Yeah.
So we, you know, so if it's working and if people are happy with the general layout, you can then
Right.
lock in some pieces that you know, again, as was just explained, we and as Bill explained, you want to visually slow people down. When I got to tell you, I turn out when I go home every night, I turn out and those telephone poles are right next to you. So anyone who speeds with a telephone pole 3 inches from your side is an idiot. Okay, so I mean, you got to slow
Can't
down.
stop idiot.
On the other side, though, I fully understand. If there's nobody parked there, it's like, oh, I got this extra lane. Well, you know, when things are back to a little bit more normal, when those cars are there, the whole point of that stretch now is it's much more narrow, and psychologically, again, Bill can talk about this more than I. It's supposed to work. Now that said, we do have to get that island built. So I'm going to talk to Brian again about bringing something before the board to look at in the spring, and maybe we could try to fund something at town meeting.
So
Elizabeth mentioned speed bumps. That's really not what we're talking about.
No, it's like an island, right? Is that what? Yeah, I think Chief Silly was involved in this conversation, right? Because we don't want to impede the fire engines either, right? We want to make it.
Speed bumps, you know, are not appropriate for a public way, but you know, an actual island, you know, and create a gateway to the village. You know, at the corner of you know, Highland Ave in North Main Street, which when you come off of Highland Ave, I actually call that the on-ramp to North Main Street, because, you know, depending on where you are, you know, the person in front, you know, they're coming off of Highland floors it. And, you know, they're going pretty good there. By the time, you know, by the time they get to Corey's house, it's, you know, 55. But if you create a gateway there and you put an island there and you cant it, you know, with the nice sign that says, you know, welcome to historic Cohasset Village, you know, whatever, just a physical barrier, and you do the same thing on the other end, you know, by anchor and sail, you know, you're creating a zone, you're sending a message. You know, sometimes it's a very visible thing, and people are forced to slow down, or you'll wipe your car out, and it just it causes that disruption in thinking, and it just sort of resets you.
Right.
And unfortunately, you know, one of the issues also, I'll be quick, is, you know, driving has become secondary. It's, you know, people are texting, they're on the phone, they're juggling a coffee, they're, you know, doing whatever. So that poses another issue.
So I guess the next step is, you know, regardless of a posting sign plan, is, you know, do we want to consider a uniform speed limit? For the reasons of having a uniform speed limit, you don't have to put signs on every single street, but clearly there are streets, especially throughways. And I think Lisa is right, like Beach Street and Nichols, and, you know, there are places in town that aren't part of the village entryways that absolutely will need to be posted. The question is, do we go forward with a discussion of adopting a uniform speed limit, or do we set up a process by which different streets get petitioned to be at different speed limits? Jack?
I think we should have the public discussion. I think it should be well publicized. And I think we should have not only the question of the uniform speed limit, but the other thing is what I've seen referred to as intensive traffic enforcement areas, which should be the village area. And maybe, I don't think there's any other place in town, but I could be incorrect. And I think we should make it clear to the town, we're gonna discuss that, publicize it, give them plenty of notice, and let's have at it.
There's places all over town that we get complaints. I mean, from we're responsible for 3A as well as 228 northbound, Forest Ave. I could go on and on. Norfolk Road, North Main Street, South Main Street, Summer Street, Beach Street, Atlantic. I mean, it's literally every town and in every road in town. I could go on and on. Again, we don't have unlimited resources, and it's very difficult. It's so sporadic to conduct enforcement. We do a ton of enforcement. Don't get me wrong, we write a ton of tickets. We write about probably 1,500 tickets a year, which is a lot for a department our size. But it's just
I'm going to go to Carrie because she had her hand up, then Chief Sylvia, and then I have one other question, and we'll wrap up.
Another member of the public, Laura Gaskins at 279 King Street. Laura, I just promoted you if you would like to share your thoughts, or I'm happy to read them too. Laura.
Maybe read.
Okay. She said, I'm concerned about the carriage house as a nursery school parent. Is there a blueprint or a mock-up of the Highland Street island that we can see?
I just sent Chris. I just sent you a link. I don't know if you can share your screen, but Westwood went through the same issue, and they
Madam Chair, just point of order. I mean, this is the discussion on the thing is the townwide speed limits. If we want to talk about other speed control measures, we should do that, but we should put that on an agenda. That way people like Laura who have questions, we have a presentation for them. I don't know if
and that's fine. Right. We did bring it up because traffic calming is generally part of the discussion. So I do think we should.
It says townwide speed limits. It doesn't say traffic calming.
But Bill brought up traffic calming measures as an option for reducing speed. So I think it's a valid question, and I think that there were plans for it. So I don't know that we need to get into the weeds on that, to Corey's point, but we can certainly provide that.
Yeah, I can point. We have her contact information. I believe there's some stuff on the website already from when we did this last. When we redid the common. That said, as I just said, when we have a more of a concrete plan, we'll be bringing it back to the board anyway.
Okay.
We need to.
Okay.
So
we did look at one, a while back, but that was a long time ago. I think it was part of the complete.
And what Bill sent me, I think, is exactly what we were talking about. So we will share this.
So I think we haven't landed yet. Sorry, Chief. I'll let you go. Go ahead.
I just have two very quick points, Madam Chairperson. This is, I would ask the board that when you're driving around Cohasset to really be aware of speed limit signs. And I think you're going to be absolutely amazed at what the limits actually are versus what people actually travel. That's number one. And I can use Forest Ave, North Main, South Main, Beechwood Street, Elm Street. The Elm Street Corridor Group is discussing how do we slow people down so they don't drive 45 miles an hour down Elm Street, as an example.
Right.
It is happening everywhere. The second piece is, and Chief Quigley has indoctrinated me into this 1,000 times, 20 means 30, 30 means 40, 35 means 45 to 55. That's what you're going to see. So if we make a speed limit and we decide it's 25, nobody drives 25. 25 means 30 to 35. So I would really, really, really stress with the board, and this is your other public safety head who has to deal with those people that drive too fast and get into trouble because of it.
You need an ambulance. Yep.
To please support Chief Quigley in regards to we need to try and slow people down in any way, shape, or form that we can do it.
Yep, agreed. So we were kind of at a decision for a next agenda to propose a uniform speed limit and stick with that discussion. But is the board thinking that we need to expand that sphere a little more? And Carrie?
I think the traffic calming measures point is inextricably intertwined, and I think that absolutely is related to the speed limit issue. And I think that we need to include that in, because I think that the chief makes a lot of good points about those as being ways that we can fix this problem too. So I think they need to be included from now on.
So next steps would be to just have a broader discussion on this, and maybe in that put that we would be having a discussion on a vote for a proposed uniform speed limit, and that doesn't mean we end up adopting one, right? But that just ramps up to Jack's point, really promoting and trying to post it as like almost like a public input hearing. Jack, you have your hand up? Mute.
Yeah, I think I agree with that, but I think that Corey had a very, very good point. We need to broaden the agenda so it's very clear we're discussing other things, because it's really not people just need to know what we're discussing. So I think we ought to have a broad-based indication to the people of the traffic control and speed that we're going to consider.
And one of the reasons why we wanted to have this discussion tonight was to see if the board had a willingness to actually be presented with a proposal that says uniform speed limit 25, uniform speed limit 30, which can then branch out into other conversations about how to handle traffic measures, throughout town, including more signage.
If I could just suggest a potential next step rather than have these conversations take up this board's time, maybe we have a public meeting or two that are separate that people can come and attend, and we can talk about things, get more input, and then
Public input meeting.
Does that make some sense? I mean, we can do whatever you want. I just thought maybe we'll have a public Zoom meeting or something with planning and get some more input, and throw some designs up and let people give thoughts. I think Corey has something to say, Diane.
I think that would be fine, and push off a proposal.
Well, no, I just get more information for you rather than,
yeah.
And that'll I think it'll help you crystallize a conversation with the public. Just a thought.
Yep. Right. Corey?
I gotta disagree with some of my, I guess, the other board members here. I think putting these two together, I think, the resident made a good point earlier, which is we're doing nothing. And if we broaden this and we talk about a bunch of stuff, well, how many weeks are we talking about what this island's going to be looking like when we can easily decide what the speed limit should be? So I'm just worried, if we keep them separate, we say, hey, we're doing townwide speed limits, and then we're going to do the next thing. I feel like we do something before we, now we're talking about hearings and meetings, and it's going to be August. And so, I'd like to kind of choose one thing, take care of it, choose the next thing, take care of it, rather than looping it all together and slowing things down.
So what I propose then is where we were 20 minutes ago, which is that we have a very soon agenda item to adopt or not, and a discussion around that, a uniform speed limit in town. And it'll come out in our packets, and it'll, we'll steal language from Situate, which I from the residents and some of the select board friends I have in Situate, they think it's been successful to some degree. And we'll discuss that. And then we may decide that isn't what we want to do, and we'll expand beyond that.
So moved. I'm getting hungry. I haven't had dinner
with that.
I know. I hear you. I hear you. Okay. Good.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay. We don't need a vote. We're going to move right on to town manager update. Thank you, everybody, for your contributions, especially those in the peanut gallery.
Okay, I was asked to give 2 quick updates. I'll put them on the screen. This is on the website, but these are the positions available at the June 5th annual election. Papers for nomination will be available on February 9th at the clerk's office. And you can see there's a comprehensive list. There's a lot of positions open. And if anybody wants to learn more about any of the boards and commissions, go to the town website, watch the videos. There's plenty of videos now to watch. You can see what the meetings are all about. My first update. The other one I've been asked to do for the tax, for the treasurer collector. Real estate taxes are due February 1st.
Next week.
Yeah, next week. You can drop them in the box out front, but they have to be in by 3 p.m. on a regular weekday or noon on a Friday to count. They go in before the things are done. There are late fees and demands and things that are just automatic, so please don't be late. Postmarks are not enough. They have to be in our hands. So, come to town. There's a giant drop box out front. Please use that. You can also pay online. Pay online is a very easy function. It's on the town's website. If anyone has any questions about how to pay or any questions about their tax bill or they lost, call the treasurer collector's office, email them. They can send you a new copy and get you what you need. So February 1st, we appreciate everybody's promptness on that. So, thank you. That's it.
That's great. The select board comments, starting with Jack.
Jack Creighton, motion to adjourn.
We have two more things on the agenda, but I get it. Corey, anything?
Yeah, just encouraging everybody to think about running for a board. A lot of the positions that are filled in this town, worryingly, are often uncontested, and that's not how this is supposed to work. So please, if you have any questions about this, cevans@cohassetma.org, send me an email. I'm happy to chat with you. We need people to step up and be part of the community. So if you're thinking about it, now's the time to do it. Thank you.
Paul?
Yeah, to reinforce what Corey said, we need a lot of volunteers. This town runs on volunteers. We have a town government, but a lot of the stuff is done by regular people that are out there doing volunteer work. And the other thing, just to reemphasize, we are, just coming on the other side of the second wave. It has been a very most difficult month of January. And I just ask people to just stay with it for a few more months and we'll get through it. The vaccines are out there. There's going to be a new one on Thursday that they're going to review. There's going to be more. We're going to get through it and just hold the line, hold the mask up. We can get through it. It's been a very most difficult series of events this last year and we'll get through it. That's it.
Great. Carrie?
I echo what everyone else said. That's all.
Yep. Ditto on my end too. And I will next move there's two sets of minutes from 9/21/2020, which were edited. Corey, thank you for doing that. And 1/12/2021. If there's a motion to approve both of those.
Motion to approve the minutes of 9/21/2020 of the Board of Select Board and January 12/2021 Board Select Board of Cohasset.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, roll call, please. Jack?
Jack Creighton, as is my policy until we are keeping archived electronic copies, I vote nay.
Okay, Corey?
I've reviewed both copies. Thank you for letting me submit my edits, and aye for both. Thank you.
Diane Kennedy, aye.
Paul Schubert, aye.
Carrie Thompson, aye.
Okay, Jack, you get the motion.
Motion to adjourn. Yeah.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, roll call, please.
Jack Creighton, aye.
Corey Evans, aye.
Diane Kennedy, aye.
Paul Schubert, aye.
Carrie Thompson, aye.
Okay, thanks for hanging in there with us. Big meeting. We got a lot done. I appreciate everybody's help. Thanks.
Very good. Thank you. Good night, all.
Good night.
Night.
Good night.